Very sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Monday, March 2nd meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This is our regular meeting. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Oh, sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you. All right. There's not any changes. I'll entertain a motion for the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Please put your mic down, ma'am.
Sorry.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now we walk right into presentations with the school superintendent, Dr. Grimsley.
Hello, good afternoon, Madam Chairman, welcome, members of the board. Greetings from your RCPS family. I see we have a little bit of fun weather, so I'm sure my phone is blowing up in my email at this point in time to tell me that it's snowing.
Be glad you're here.
February was a very eventful month, to say the least. We're very ready for spring to grace the area soon. Teachers have been extremely busy repacing their curriculum and adjusting instruction to make up for the lost time with the winter days that we had with all the, Ice-Mageddon or Freeze-Crete, whatever you want to call that. Yeah. We did have a tremendous professional development day on February 13th, led by our very own faculty, who have been working with the Center for Inspired Teaching in strategies to enhance student engagement and building a supportive learning environment. Teachers presenting were Amy Grady and Sarah Moore on Bookmaking is Thinking, Creighton Long and Michelle Griffith on real-time resiliency, Amy and Kyle Wenzel on strong starts for every class, Sally Shackelford with CIT's Jenna Furnell in supporting students with ABCDEs of learning, Jennifer Deal, Lauren Williams, and Heather Pitts on game-based learning, and Jeffrey Day and CIT's Cosby Hunt on Beyond Worksheets, Simple Structures to Activate Learning. The sessions were very well received, and staff requested that these workshops actually be offered again in our April professional development so that they can go to the ones that they were not able to attend the first time. February was an incredible month for our athletics teams. Our indoor track program will be represented by 8 athletes in the upcoming state meet this week at Liberty University. Both the boys and girls basketball teams did advance to the regional semifinal round, with the boys clinching a state bid, and they advanced to the Region 1B championships on Friday. Whew, what a game. Still have words, but Our Scholastic Bowl team also advanced to the state tournament this past weekend, where they did place 4th in the state. We are so very proud of our teams and for the incredible community support that always rallies around our Panthers. Last week was National FFA Week. The RCHS celebrated with a fun agriculture-themed Spirit Week, including a truck and tractor show in the bus loop. The week was a lot of fun and raised awareness of the FFA program in the Ag Academy at the high school. Half of the RCES 7th graders spent the day in Richmond for the RCPS annual State Capitol Day field trip. The second half will, weather permitting, go tomorrow, but it doesn't look like that may happen. We may have to postpone. The students toured the Capitol, met with Delegate Weber and Senator Reeves, where they learned about their jobs and how they became interested in politics, and finished the day at the Virginia Science Museum. A huge thank you to Jenny Capsa, our Profile of a Graduate Coordinator, for all of her work on this trip and many, many more things, too numerous to mention. Our Spark summer program applications have opened, and we are already filling up this fast. It's only been a couple of weeks. Our CPS and Headwaters are teaming up once again to offer this 8.5-week program through June and July in order to keep kids engaged, active, and learning at an affordable cost. Spark will run 8 to 4 in June and 9 to 4 in July, with many fun activities and field trips planned. The registration is open until the end of the month and can be accessed on the RCPS webpage. Preschool applications are also open for the 26-27 school year. The application is on our website, and we shared it on social as well. Applications should be turned into Jessica Portillo at the school board office by April 10th. Our CHS 8th graders participated in the 2026 Reality Store program last Thursday, offered in partnership with the Virginia Cooperative Extension Office. At the start of the activity, students are randomly assigned a career and a monthly income. They then had to purchase items from different booths run by the community volunteers, ranging from housing, transportation, childcare, groceries, utilities, dental care, entertainment, and more. This activity helps students better understand the importance of budgeting, choosing needs over wants, and having a savings account, and the importance of that. Next week, on March 10th, I will be presenting the superintendent's budget to the school board for consideration. Just up to this weekend, we received some additional baseline numbers for calculation. So we will be revamping a little bit of our draft budget this week for presentation for the hearing on March 10th, 6:30. Thank you so much for participating in the joint meeting last month. It's really a great thing when we can work together to find creative solutions, especially with some of the significant challenges we have on the horizon and the very capital improvement projects that are needed. So we really appreciate that. And thank you for your advocacy for the families of Rappahannock. Do you have any questions for me?
Supervisor Whitson?
No, thank you.
No?
Thanks.
My only question, you don't have to spend, I'm sure can't spend a lot of time on this. I'm aware that there's talk in a neighboring county of pulling funding of a particular program, the Mount Vista Governor's School. Knowing that you're going to present your budget next week, and also knowing the intricacies involved with dual enrollment, all of that, are you prepared to pivot? Or is it too early to call?
It is very early in the discussions of that potentiality. I know that neighboring district has 62 slots for which they pay quite a bit, which also impacts all of the surrounding districts and their contributions as well. So it will definitely have an impact. How much of an impact, we do not yet know until it's officially made. But that's something we need to, definitely pay attention to.
Yeah, I'm curious how many kids we have in Governor's School. I think we have 2 graduating seniors. Is that right? So
We do. And then 1 underclassman, and then we have 4 applications for the current year coming up. So
okay. So it would impact a few kids.
it would, and there have been some additional dual enrollment changes from the academic advisory portion of that. So we want to make sure that's very clearly articulated to families about the number of dual enrollment credits that they have had in the past that they may not receive this time going through. Yes.
Thanks.
Just one statement. Go Panthers. They've had a great week. Sports buff, but no other questions. I know we're going to have a lot of opportunity to tease out some budget conversation and in the very near future. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I'm really thankful that you teach real life courses and that you're preparing the children to go out into the real world. I keep seeing that commercial on the news about what would you like to have learned in school, and one of them is how to balance a checkbook, and I'm like, well, you should have come to Rappahannock.
They get a lot of that.
Thank you for doing
Family Future starts that with kindergartners.
I know. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we have Christy Connolly with the Path Foundation.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for having me here this afternoon. I want to share a little bit with you about the Path Foundation, the work that we've been doing, some resources that might be available for your constituents, and then some of the work that we've done in Rappahannock County. And I'll do it rather briefly, but I also wanted to introduce you to, no surprise, no strangers to you, Betsy Deedle and Sally Morgan, who are on our board of the Path Foundation, Amy Petty, who is our Vice President of Communication, and I ran into Darren Stevens. It was so good to see him. He's formerly on our Community Advisory Committee, so another familiar face. For those of you who don't know, we are the Path Foundation. We've been in existence just a little over 12 years. We were formed as a result of the sale of the hospital back in 2013, and we invest in Culpeper, Rappahannock, and Fauquier counties, a little over $100 million so far since inception. Our core focus areas, we have affirmed these every 3 years since our inception by doing community health needs assessments, and that is access to health, which that's everything, housing, transportation, broadband, so it's a lot broader than just access. Childhood wellness, and Shannon was talking a little bit about the schools, and we do a lot in the way of Commit to be Fit and the Fit Kids Clinic there. Mental health, very happy that the Rappahannock County Public Schools at one point had every person in the school system trained in youth mental health first aid. Would be happy to see that happen again. And also senior services, we are one of the early founders from the beginning of Rapid Home. There is a slide, yes, that one, that goes into a little bit more depth about all the programs and things that we do. I'll just give you a quick overview. Under health priorities, those are any things that fall under those 4 priority areas. We do grant making that is a little bit broader than that. So if you are a nonprofit that is in the pet space, we can do technical assistance. We can help you with your strategic planning. We can help you with your fundraising database and things of that nature. Might just not fall under our 4 priority areas, although I happen to think that pets are very good for mental health. So we also do a lot in this space around civic engagement, where we want folks to, in this very divisive time, come together. So we're really trying to encourage volunteer activities, coming together for community-facing events and so forth. So that's where you see some Let's Volunteer and Better Together, Make It Happen grants. Capacity building, we have meeting space. We offer space to our nonprofits. And we have an intern program that we're particularly proud of, where we have about 20 plus interns every summer that we pay, but we source them out to nonprofits in the community so they can get exposed to the sector and the work that's happening in the area in which they live. Community engagement, talked a little bit about that with Let's Volunteer and Better Together. And then regional collaboration and support, we are a place-based funder. However, we do some things that are on the broader context of Virginia so that it'll help all of us. For instance, we are the fiscal sponsor for the Virginia Funders Network. Now about 130 foundations in the state of Virginia come together, learn together, plan together, and now it's starting to get the attention of like the Robert Wood Johnson Foundations and the larger organizations that would skip over us because we weren't organized. The next slide, and these are some things that might be helpful for some of your constituents. Path Community Link, I'd like to consider that like a 211 on steroids. So if you have someone in your community that is looking for a medical specialist, food assistance, housing assistance, transportation, they can call this number and there will be somebody, a live person on the other end who can speak Spanish as well, and they can connect them with the resources that they might need. Path Volunteer Hub, I call this our match.com for volunteers and organizations. You put in your interest, what time you have available, and it matches you with an organization. And then, as I mentioned before, meeting rooms and nonprofit space. The next 2 slides have quite a few things that we've done in Rappahannock, so I'll go through those, but I would welcome any questions that you have as well. We have given money to the planning effort around broadband, also $1 million toward the County Broadband Authority. The Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission, a regional transportation collaborative, which is a mouthful. That is the one-stop shop where you can call if you need a ride. It has Voltran, it has the American Cancer Society, has on-demand, a bunch of services, but that's a clearinghouse where you can get access to a ride for a need you have. Rapid Home, I'm sure you all are familiar with that organization. In fact, I was looking through the slides and I said, I'm not sure what the bottom picture is, but apparently that's a birding activity of Rapid Home. So, Child Care and Learning Center, a lot of operational support there. Same with the Rappahannock Food Pantry, the Rappahannock Benevolent Fund, and then Sperryville Community Alliance. And then the next slide, I mentioned Rappahannock County Schools, Commit to be Fit, and the Fit Kids Clinic. We have supported those. Rush River Commons, we do offer overhead support to some of the nonprofits that are based there and some of the works that are happening on the trails. The Rappahannock County Park, Foothills Forum, the Rappahannock County Farm Tour, Rappahannock Association for the Arts and the Community. And I understand at the park that we have concrete cornhole, shuffleboard, and tennis courts that have been resurfaced. Headwaters Foundation, Sustainability Matters, which is planting flowers on the landfill, and then the Rappahannock Center for Education. That is it in a nutshell. What questions do you all have? For me or for my board members?
Ms. Connolly, thank you very much. First of all, I think we all would agree. We are so grateful to you and Ms. Deedle and others within the Path Foundation who made it possible for that $1 million to come into our broadband program. You might or might not be aware construction is finally underway, thank goodness. And if on your way home you want to drive toward Castleton and let the guys know, hey, we put $1 million into this, keep working.
On my way out.
No, but it's going, and I think that partnership and your organization's willingness to invest in that got us over the finish line, and hopefully we'll all have broadband soon.
That'd be great.
The long list of organizations, local organizations in Rappahannock County suggests to me that perhaps the Path Foundation should just focus on Rappahannock County because you've got plenty to do here. Forget about those other folks. We need your
We
help.
hear a similar sentiment in each of the other counties.
But it's an amazing thing to hear your involvement with the food pantry and Rapid Home, a great organization, the Benevolent Fund, schools, food pantry, CCLC, the list goes on. So we appreciate all that. And then finally, I know Darren Stevens is a very adept politician. So if he didn't corner you on your way in, he'll corner you on the way out to talk to you about Rapid Home and our EMS team's effort on the automated defibrillator front. And I think we've got an exciting opportunity, and we would love to present to you a proposal for potentially funding some part of that. So thank you to you and your colleagues and your board members and everyone for all you do for Rappahannock County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, absolutely.
Same. Thank you.
Go ahead. One quick question, Christy, on the Sperryville Community Alliance with regards to the grant making, or what was that for? Or do you
A
recall?
little bit of general operating, and I think there were some things associated with the Riverwalk,
Okay. Okay.
which I had Saturday was gorgeous, was it not? I was down there. What a perfect day to be walking along the river.
Thank you.
I do have one question for you, and I apologize for not letting you know ahead of time, but I have had some people ask with volunteer fire and rescue why PATH does not engage in any way, that, at least financially, that I know of. Can you explain? I believe I understand, but I think it would be good to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'll start back when we first formed 12 and a half years ago. What we heard from other peer foundations is that they could be buying new fire trucks, buying new things all day long and still not getting to the core root of issues in a community. And so they decided that they were going to kind of hold that out there, and they felt like that was really a governmental responsibility. So we have kind of fallen suit. There have been exceptions to this. We have participated in some campaigns when it's something for perhaps a piece of capital, or most recently, when we had Winter Storm Fern, we made a contribution to each of the EMS fire companies in the footprint to help cover food and things of that nature while they were responding to that need. So we have not gotten big into that space because we could probably be doing all of that and not doing anything that we're doing in the mental health access and things of that nature. A lot of people don't get involved in broadband. A lot of people don't get involved in operating support for nonprofits. That's really hard money to come by, and we feel like that's really shoring up those resources in a community.
No, I definitely appreciate what you're doing. I just want to make sure we understand.
No, absolutely.
I had one more question. In the midst of all my accolades, I forgot to ask the bottom line question. So in terms of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about Path Foundation basically resting on an endowment that came out of the sale of the hospital. At a very high level in terms of your financial sustainability for these incredible programs, and we casually say, oh, thank you for the $1 million for broadband. This is $1 million.
Yeah.
So I think it would be helpful for people to understand how the Path Foundation will continue to sustain itself financially based on the initial infusion of cash from the sale of the community hospital, and the extent to which that forward-looking financial plan will require additional money through donations or otherwise. So
Yeah.
I would just like to have a picture
Of course.
of the plan.
We don't anticipate fundraising. Got the money from the sale of the hospital, and then a few years later, we sold the remaining 20%. At one point in time, we still had 20% ownership of the hospital. We thought our asset size was gonna be about 150, 175. We have a very engaged, thoughtful investment committee that has invested that money quite well. It's been a good market. So we are now at close to $290 million. And that is our intention to continue to steward those dollars. We have had some unanticipated contributions that have certainly helped. Mackenzie Scott made a $15 million grant to the Path Foundation. That was quite a surprise and a thrill. Prior life, I was a fundraiser. Never did I believe that I was going to get the biggest gift ever when I wasn't fundraising. So we intend to keep stewarding those dollars to be here for our community.
Thank you for that. Sorry.
Thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, now we have the conceptual information on the land use taxation program with our Commissioner of Revenue, Mary Graham.
Hey, good afternoon. Do I have to adjust this? Are we okay? Hey, good afternoon and welcome to our new folks here. John, is it Janelle? Did I say that right?
That's right,
Okay.
yeah.
And Gary Settle. We appreciate your joining the board. And before I get into what I'm here for, I just want to extend an invitation to both of you. You're welcome anytime to come meet with me and learn about what my office does. Other supervisors have done that in the past. I'm happy to do it. I think it's helpful. So that is open to you. So the board asked me two questions, basically, about land use. First, what can the board do and what can't they do about the program? And second, how can you as a board be assured that everyone in the program is doing what they're required to do? So I sent you all last week a long document with lots of information. I'm not going to go through that exact thing today. It's in front of you. I'm going to hit some high points. And I kind of want to stress that the budget items for land use would not come into play until fiscal year 2028. So that would be something to be thinking about for the future. The first of those things is the revalidation fee. This is a fee that is charged once every 6 years for each parcel in land use. It cannot be more than the application fee, and both these fees are set in our county ordinances. And at this point, they're both $60. So I gave you a table of other counties, both ones right around us and then others that are in that same bracket of richer counties, so that you can think about this and maybe discuss it at some point. One thing that I found really interesting, Mr. Gary Curry told me that in the last time this fee was collected in 2021, as part of the also reassessment year, that revalidation fee covered about half the cost of reassessment, which is a sizable amount. So that's something to consider there. And it's kind of handy that they're cyclical and land at about the same place, time-wise. So the next time this fee is collected will be the fall of 2027 during the revalidation period for land use. So the next The next thing that would affect the budget are use values. So during a reassessment, a general reassessment year, is when the use values are addressed. And it's not a board function, it is an assessor function. I was taught that the use values are only set during reassessment as part of general reassessment. I wanted to make sure I understood that correctly, so I called Virginia Tax and had a long conversation with them about land use and use values and all of that. And yes, I was taught correctly. If the use values were addressed outside of a general reassessment, it's considered spot assessment, which goes against uniformity and is not allowed. Well, it's not spelled out in the code. They don't talk about use values directly, but it is interpreted that way. There is a Attorney General opinion that addresses this. And there's been talk about how our use values, how they compare with surrounding counties. I had a long conversation with Madison's commissioner, who we have, in my mind, the most similar situation. And he and I could not see why there would be a huge difference. The only thing we could really come up with, and I gave you kind of a list of possibilities in what I presented to you last week. But the main reason both of us kind of drilled down to is data. The data in Rappahannock probably is not as complete, probably is not as good as the data they have available in Madison for whatever reason. I don't know. But one of my goals with the upcoming reassessment, and I mentioned this and I've talked to a few people about this, is getting a group of citizens to help collect the data so that we have good data to make that assessment on. The other thing the commissioner from Madison said was that he worked with their extension agent in kind of finalizing those values, which I plan to check in with.
Mary, just a
Yes, sir.
quick point of clarification. So you talked to your counterpart in Madison County, and you noted a difference in you're asking the question why something was different, and I didn't quite catch
Yeah, the use values.
the use values
Yeah,
themselves. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed
Oh,
that.
oh, no worries. So again, my goal for 2027 is to get better data so we can make better decisions. Historically, this SLAAC values, which is the state land, I can never remember what it is, but the group that oversees land use from the state, their values for forestry have followed pretty closely to what we've done, but their agriculture and horticulture values have been way lower than what we have had. And again, I think a lot of their data, their process is driven on data, and what they're getting is what people have reported from our county to them. So I think we're going to have to look closer ourselves.
So I'm same line as Kier, just for clarification. First of all, it's the State Land Evaluation and Advisory Council.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What specific data does Madison have that we don't have? That you would need
It's
people
just
to?
reporting of income, reporting of use of, how much per acre do things cost, that kind of thing.
Okay,
That's our guess. Again,
don't know.
I don't really know. We were just trying to brainstorm what the difference would be when across the border there's not any real difference.
If you're asking for volunteers, I just want to make sure they're not thinking they're going in to take a survey of how many, bathrooms you have in your house and that kind of thing.
Oh, no, this would be purely for land use,
Land
as
use.
in, contact how much is a steer going for? how much do you get for a bushel of this? You know, how much does a roll of hay go for? All those sorts of things so that we can kind of figure out some better numbers.
If we're missing anything. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So the second question that you all asked was about how can you be assured that everyone qualifies who's in the program? And I'm going to go back to my conversation with tax. In that conversation, I mentioned your concern. And so they were like, okay, well, describe your program. Tell me what you do. Tell me what your processes are. And I went through it with them and using their words, I have a robust program. That said, not everybody in the world is honest. Not everybody is going to be straightforward, but we do our best to tease it out. And often when there is some kind of discrepancy, if you look a little further, there may be a reason we can find. We try to. We're not, we're human, so we do our best. And I gave you a list in what I provided of the types of things we do. And one thing that would be super helpful from you all is if your constituents come to you complaining about land use, saying, having concerns, if you can either direct them straight to me, or if they're not willing to do that, if you can come straight to me. And here's the thing, I can't respond to general things like, oh, I just think the program's broken, or things like that.
Right.
I need specifics. I need, that land down there is not doing such and such. I can follow up on things like that. I can't follow up on broad statements. And we do follow up. So,
Yeah, and Mary, since I was the one who brought this up, I'll just tell you for sure, I agree with you. People come to me all the time with comments at the Quickie Mart or whatever and say, hey, such and such isn't doing such and such. And it's helpful, but I agree with you. You need specifics, and I know you're very sharp on the numbers. I raise the question mainly so that when we have these ongoing annual discussions about revenue shortfall, and separate from that, we're hearing anecdotally, for whatever it's worth, anecdotally without specificity, concerns from citizens that maybe not everybody's playing by the rules from a land use perspective. I thought it was an opportunity to simply say to you, it would be good to hear directly from you what it is that you actually do from an enforcement standpoint, because whether you're talking about the treasurer's office or the revenue commissioner's office or the sheriff's department or the clerk of the court, we all know that we operate with lean staffing. And so if we're feeling the pressure to generate more revenue somehow, land use is important to the preservation of open space, and there are rules that allow for that open space to exist. Our only question, or my only question, and maybe you could expand on what your counterpart in the state tax office declared was robust, I'd like to hear what you actually do. That's all.
Okay.
And that way I can then, when people bring up these vague comments about, hey, there's no enforcement, I can say, actually, there's a lot of enforcement. And I know some of it because we've talked about it in the past. And I know that some of it is just a sense of places and being familiar with our county. But it would be helpful to hear what you do from an enforcement perspective. And that's all I was seeking.
okay. So, one thing, when we hear these problems or there's a parcel where they've had 3 farmers in the last 5 years. I mean, that's usually a problem. That says something to me, something is going on. And I'll take a close look at that parcel. The first thing I do, because I have the tools now, is I look at aerials of that property. Now, if anybody here has used that kind of thing out on the internet, you cannot count on those lines, those property lines being correct. That's until we have a better system that's internal. I use them to augment plats. And so I'm making sure I'm looking at the correct area when I review a parcel. There have been a few examples in the last years where we've had that kind of problem situation. And when I look at it, this 6-acre hayfield is really only 3 acres. But it's always been on the book as 6 acres. And the way it's delineated, it's always been 3 acres. That's a mistake that was allowed to happen because we didn't have good tools a long time ago. And, this was set in the records a long time ago. And I very gently tell these people, unfortunately, you've been farming, you've been doing everything you're supposed to do, but you can't stay on land use anymore. It's not enough acreage. So, that's one situation. There are other times when we find in a similar situation where the owners have done nothing to keep up the productivity of the land. And sometimes there may be some joint blame if that particular farmer has overgrazed or any number of things. But when it comes right down to it, in the land use code, it's the owner's responsibility to make sure the land is productive. So I'll send a letter and I'll tell them that what have you done? Have you tested the soil? What's going on there? And they'll decide at that point, well, do they want to stay in and do what's required? Or do they want to get out at this point? They weigh the cost of fertilizer and lime or whatever else and land use. So situations like that, we try to address it with the owner and try to either get them on a productive track or ease them out of the program. So annually, we look at each account. Now, we're not doing an aerial review of every account, but we're just looking at the documentation we have. We're looking at what people have reported. We're making sure that all the pieces are there covering the last year. So if there's any kind of issues, we address it on the revalidation form. If something is coming due, like if the forest management plan is due to be updated, and we let them know ahead of time. So we look at what's due, like this year, we're going to be looking at what's due in 27. We'll remind people that they need to have it done by the end of 27. And we'll also tell the people from this year, yours is due on December 5th this year. So that annual review makes us, eyes on every single account so that we're at least somewhat assured things are going on that should go on. So then, as I said, on the forms, we put action items if necessary. And we note in our computer system what items we need from people so that we know as stuff comes in if they've been complete in their reporting. So we ask for periodic proof of income. If it's one of our major farmers who always has income, we're not going to ask them for that, but every 3 years. We're just not. It's, we don't need to look at their taxes every year. But if it's someone who's struggling and there hasn't been production or whatever reason, we will ask them every year we have to. And often if people don't want to share their taxes, we would prefer to see that receipt from the livestock sale. We would prefer to see that, to know that what they're claiming is actually what they're getting money for. So we track when foresters have said that the forest management plan on file is due to be renewed, not renewed, that's not the right word, reviewed. And it's interesting because the forest management plans, that's usually what they say. This needs to be updated, or we need to look at the land again, and it can be all kinds of things, 5, 7, 15, 20, 30 years. So that's, that's the extent of it. And the best we do is whenever that due date comes up, make sure that that forester reviews the land again. We also ask for reports of board feet when they do a harvest. We also require that farm reports come directly from the farmer. We're more assured that we're getting good information that way. And, there are some rare cases where we'll accept what the owner says. And there's, circumstances that deem that, but usually we want to talk to the farmer, and they're great. They talk to us, and we don't make it difficult. They can call us. They can give us their reports over the phone. They can, most of them drop by and we go through the whole list together. So, and my people are excellent at following through with all of that. So we try to identify sources of bad information and correct them. So if people are saying things they shouldn't say, we had a farmer last year telling people, oh, I only have to cut once and I just have to report $1,000. We're good. And that's not how it works. It's not. And luckily, one of the owners knew that's not how it worked. And he came to us and he was upset. And he said, this is what's being said out there. And so I talked to that farmer directly. I said, don't say this to people. It's not true. We have to look closely at places that claim equestrian activity, mainly because there are only 4 allowed activities. And this isn't even clearly in the land use manual. This is from courses that are developed by my association. And they've made it very clear it has to be profit-driven activities with horses. And then, as needed, I do aerial reviews, and especially when properties transfer, just to make sure we're not continuing bad data forward.
You get noticed when property does transfer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know, sorry to interrupt, but I know something that people get confused on, especially people buying land that's been in land use and then deciding they not want it in land use, and then they get a bill for 5 years back tax. So I'd like you to make that really clear, as well as there's an opt-out over time if a farmer's been in it for a long time and decides they don't want to have the hassle anymore. You have a program that will allow them to get out over a few years or something. So I would appreciate it if you'd have that on the mic as well for people to hear.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Glad to. Something flitted through my head, too, about that last list. It may come back to me. So what Chairwoman Donahue was talking about is, so at the time of a transfer, there's a property in land use. The owners have farmed it right up to the moment of the sale. Or, within reason for that year, what would be considered farming. They sell the property, the new person doesn't want to have anything to do with land use. They're the ones who change the use, because the things that trigger a rollback are change in use or not qualifying activities. So they decide to quit farming, that 5-year rollback is on them. Absolutely. There's another situation where, say, an owner has 20-acre parcel. The bulk, well, let's say half of it is farmed, so in agriculture. The minimum for agriculture, acreage-wise, is 5 acres. Of the three categories that Rappahannock has adopted, which are agriculture, horticulture, and forestry, one of those three, by the code, is allowed to tag on even if it doesn't have qualifying number of acres. That's forestry. So say this person has 20 acres, 10 acres farmed, 10 acres are forest, and they subdivide. So they subdivide it and they keep the farmed part because they like that, whatever. And they sell off these 10 acres. They have separated 10 acres that does not qualify on its own. It's only 10 acres of forest. The rollback is on them. So if someone else buys it, but the rollback is on the person who subdivided. So it may sound like the same kind of situation, but it's not. They made that change. So whoever stops the farming, whoever changes the qualifications, in that case it's changing the acreage qualification, they're the ones responsible for the rollback. A rollback is the last 5 years of back taxes, plus interest, plus penalty, plus the current year is supplemented. And since the current year isn't due till December 5th, I usually just take them out of land use, bill them the full amount, and then the rollback is for the previous 5 years.
Mary, just as a corollary to Debbie's line of inquiry, you gave an example of where we were working off of very old parcel maps in a case where the record showed a 6-acre parcel, and you came to the property owner and said, it's not, and you can't remain in land use. In a situation like that, I want to kind of go to the beyond enforcement to now remedies. And in a situation like this, and you were so gracious in working with me on a personal property assessment question, I think 2 summers ago, and I'm grateful for you working with me on that for a citizen. Similarly here, if it's an error that's really an error that is legacy and on our books, and not the fault of the property owner, they just knew they'd been in land use. Do you or do you not apply a rollback penalty in that case, or do they get a free pass?
That's a good question, because I feel that is my office's mistake. You know, even if it was from 10 or 20 years ago, it was my office's mistake. They have farmed. They have done what they are supposed to do. I do not charge a rollback tax in that situation.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable approach. And then on the
Yeah.
flip side, and I'm not saying that this has happened or happens frequently, but let's say you identified outright fraud, a fraudulent affidavit, stating certain amount of productivity, whether it be hay or cattle or something else. What is the remedy there? What is the penalty? What happens? What do you do, or what would you do if you found evidence of falsification of an affidavit?
So,
And
This
have
is
you,
meant-
have you identified any falsification?
yeah, this is from many years ago. There was someone who reported that a parcel was farmed, and the neighbor said, "Oh no, it was not." And we had reasonable proof that it was not. That property got rolled back. That was just an outright lie. You know, as far as exact numbers about what's required, it's, there's one of the things in the land use code is the minimum yield allowed is half of the average. Now, if everybody got half the average, well, it's no longer the average. And so you have to really be careful there. I try not to go there. I'd rather just look at what's happening, and if it's on the low side, that's one of those cases where I look and say, has this land been improved? Have you taken soil tests? Do you know if it's in good shape? You know, is it overgrazed, whatever? And we kind of go down that aisle and sort it out. This is not an easy question what you're
Yeah,
asking.
no, I
Each
appreciate
situation is different, and we just try to scope it out. Did I answer that question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's sufficient. I want to know that there's real teeth in the system for people who, and I'm not saying I'm not saying people falsify affidavits ever. It comes down to revenue again, and the whole purpose of this discussion, at least in my mind, is to make sure that the program is tight. And I hear from citizens all the time how much they respect you and enjoy working with you, and you know, that's from people who might not be so happy about the news you're giving them, but people always speak of your professionalism and your even-handedness, and so, you know, our eagerness to talk to you or hear from you really is rooted in just understanding how your office operates. And then kind of my last question, I apologize for interrupting, 2 questions. On the forestry management plans, obviously these are extended over a long period of time. You don't have the annual agricultural productivity to measure the level of land use and qualification for the program like you would with, you know, a hayfield or a cattle operation. So with forestry management plan, you talk about tracking and they extend over many years, sometimes decades. How is that tracking handled? Is it simply an Excel spreadsheet that you maintain of every forestry management plan? What's the mechanism?
Our current real estate system has a really good couple pages for land use.
Okay.
So we've got fields. We have a field that says when the plan that's on file now is due, and then we put when it was done and by who.
Okay.
And then there's a place to put, you know, harvest records. So yeah, we pull up a report based on that data every year just to make sure who we need to contact.
And I guess my last question is, and this is not to suggest that there's an open check of taxpayer money available for expanded staffing, because I think we all operate leanly. But it sounds like you have, and rightly so, you have confidence in your ability to enforce land use taxation and make sure people play by the rules. And since you're here and it's only there's one area where we can help you, and that's making sure your staffing is sufficient. Do you feel right now, at this time, that you have sufficient staffing to handle enforcement and oversight of our land use program, which is a linchpin of what Rappahannock County is?
I hope so. So I've had to try to hire people at entry level, and some of y'all probably know that I haven't had the best time keeping people or getting good people in the last few years. I'm super hopeful that I finally got my team.
Okay.
I really am. It's I feel good about it. I think so. Granted, 3 people, we're still not going to be able to go out in the field and observe things. It really is based on reporting and that kind of stuff. But we can follow up on leads a lot more readily if we all are on the same page and understand. And so far, my new person, Jean Roby, come by and meet her if you haven't already. She's lovely and hard worker. I think that she's a great addition, and I am super hopeful.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, and I want to back up to your second part of your question.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about a way out of the program. So there is what's called workout, where you
And this is
officially...
specific to land use, correct?
Yes, this is land use. So you officially ask to be taken out of the program to start paying full taxes. while at the same time you continue farming or whatever activity you are doing to comply with the program. So after 5 years of continuing farming and paying full taxes, you're released totally from the program without having any rollback taxes. So that is appealing to older people with smaller parcels who are tired of farming, but they figure they can do that many more years. And we have a good handful of people who have entered that program. I will also automatically put people in that program who get out of land use because of paperwork reasons. And I'll explain to them, that's where you are. So your farmer needs to report in this coming year, or there will be a rollback tax. Most often, they keep on farming. Sometimes they apply to get back in the program. There have been occasions where there is no proof of farming and they get rolled back. So it is a good program for older citizens
No, I appreciate that you do
who want to
that.
get out.
Supervisor General, I think you had something.
I do, yeah, thank you for putting this together. It's very, very interesting and thorough. I will say, having been on the other end of the enforcement, both in my, my day job at Eldon, but also, in the evening job of the properties that I farm, I've always found the enforcement to be thorough. And that was before I was on the Board of Supervisors. So, you know, if I look at this and I say there are 32,000 acres in land use, in agricultural land use, I'm pretty sure that almost all of that is actively farmed, unless somebody is just blatantly lying. I don't think you could ever have enough staff to travel around the county and catch people lying. And I think the answer needs to be to anybody who, you know, comes to us and says, hey, people are slipping by, say, let us know who. I mean, the neighbors are the ones that can help us to enforce this the best. And so, and I will say, it's interesting, these use values have been flat for really a few decades for the
For a
agricultural
while,
side.
yeah.
And I'm probably partly guilty for that. I've never filled out my surveys. I always get them, and it's so much work to fill them out. And so I guess to pay back for that, I'll volunteer to be one of your citizens to go around and collect the information.
I would love that.
In seriousness, though, we know what beef prices have done. Most of our agricultural use is beef production, and everybody raising beef cattle is having a very, very good time, and so these probably should be adjusted up.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
in the future.
I've got some figures on that. Even just the forestry, which I've followed fairly closely with SLAIC values. For 2026, they're recommending in the Piedmont area for your average 500, and in the mountain area 375. Both of those numbers are above what we have now. So, and Madison has opted, and theirs is effective this year. Their reassessment is effective this year. They have opted to go with 500 for their forestry. So if that continues, then in 27, when I'm figuring out 28's value, it would be at least that. We'll see what happens.
Well, I did have a question on the forestry. It's interesting, we have more acres in forestry land use than ag land use. It's 44,000 in forestry land use and 32,000 in agricultural. And so it's interesting, we tend to focus on the agriculture land use. Mm-hmm. And in our county, really forestry land use is a bigger deal. And it's my understanding from reading what you wrote up for us was that you can require that me as the farmer says how many bales of hay did I take, how many cows did I have, how many sheep did I have. But the board fee, basically, as long as I have a timber management plan or forestry management plan on file, that's okay. And so you can't require that I log every so many years.
Right, no. And that's not what plans say.
Yeah, so.
I mean, it's up to that forester. I mean, I'm not gonna step on a forester. They're the experts there.
So what happens, I guess this is my question, what happens if I buy 40 acres, I put it into forestry land use, I get the forester to write the plan that says you should log in 10 years. 10 years passes and he says, well, let's wait another
Well, none
5
of them
years.
say that. None of them say that. They say review for a possible harvest. That's
so-
what they say.
So what if we keep kicking the can and
What's the matter? A tree
decades-
is growing and producing oxygen. I'm okay with that.
But we're not okay with that if grass is growing and producing oxygen. We say the cow must be there, the tractor must cut the grass. But we don't say the logger must be there. And I realize that's the state requirement, that's not us.
Right.
That's my understanding of it. But at some point, I think we need to be able to say, you gave us this plan, a decade ago.
You know what's
No.
interesting? Is if you read the plans from the state forester, and the state forester had something to do with, land use, et cetera, way back when. They are all about conservation at this point. They don't go into harvest at all. They don't. They talk about what the people should do to keep that forest healthy. So I personally have to take that as a valid thing. There are plenty of people in the county who want it as a money stream, and they manage for select cuts, and they do that.
Yeah.
But if the forest department itself is saying, if you are conserving these acres and making that healthy woods, that's okay. Who am I to say otherwise?
I guess my reply to that would be that, you have forestry, agriculture, horticulture, and open space. That's really open space land use. In my mind, that's,
It is not. It is not if you read what open space is. It is not.
so
It
is
forest.
forestry land use supposed to be revenue generating? That's the question.
They do talk about it being revenue generating.
Which is board feet, right? I mean, that's-
Yeah, 4
that's-
feet.
That's a tree cut down.
They also have room for non-productive forest. And again, this was developed in part with input from the Department of Forestry, and maybe the thought was different back then. But how can we, unless I interview each forester every time and say, okay, could this have been harvested? Even that, waiting 5 years and the trees are bigger, that's a valid thing too.
Yeah.
I
agree.
can't, how can I police that, John?
Yep.
How can I?
I agree, and we don't really have the authority to anyways. We can't
Yeah,
require
so-
that they cut, but it's, and so I can understand, like, and maybe I need to read more to understand whether this is revenue generating or not. And I certainly don't want to advocate for irresponsible logging.
Here's
We
another
don't want to do
thing.
that, so.
Land use was created in part to support people who make their money off the land. But the other part of it was to maintain open and agricultural and those sorts of spaces. It's a dual thing. We cannot focus on just one or the other. It's a package.
It sounds like, those are great on-point questions, and in my view, and Mr. Janot brought up forestry as an area that was worth looking at more closely, so I'm not surprised by his line of inquiry. Coming out of this discussion, I think one area that we do need to look at is this interplay between forestry conservation and forestry productivity, for sure. And I understand your broad point. How can you police it if sort of the state policy is really landing on conservation with less emphasis on revenue generation through productivity of board feet? But nevertheless, I think we need to look, this is not putting on you, we need to look at land use in Rappahannock County on the forestry front especially closely to make sure that it is laid out in a way that makes sense and aligns with state law, et cetera. That's my takeaway. I think John really hit the nail on the head when he said, if you rest on conservation in the context of forestry, it sounds like open space land use.
But it's not. If
I
you read
understand
about open space, that's not what it is.
Yeah, but if there's not revenue generation as a linchpin of that use, it's hard to argue that it's not open space type land use. So anyway, it's really interesting. Now we can talk more about it.
So I've been in this office for all of 10 years. I've been commissioner for 7. I've got forest management plans that say 30-year span.
Yeah.
And as far as I understand, it just requires a plan. It doesn't require a commitment to do exactly what's in the plan.
Well, that implies that they should do what's in the plan. I mean, it does. But if you read the plans, they are vague. And what they're saying is a review in this many years. Well, a review is not necessarily a harvest. I don't know, I have to just, because believe me, I have thought about all these things.
Over and over.
And I just step back and I'm like, if they're healthy trees, I'm gonna be happy. Now, there's one thing that this kind of brings to mind, Kira, what you were talking about is these little bits of forest that are allowed to tag on. That might be a place to look.
Okay.
You know, if that is truly not being managed,
Yeah.
then should it be allowed to be tagged on? I'd have to delve deeper into, and in fact, it's probably another conversation with tax about that, Virginia tax, just to see what their ideas are.
Supervisor Comer, do you have anything?
I didn't, the one question, I wanted to make sure I knew how many employees you had in your, office, and Supervisor Whitson beat me to that question. And then I'll just let, Supervisor Jeno and Supervisor Settle know that I know I've, taken up this fine lady's time a couple of times in her office to help with this complex, topic. So when she says that her door is open and she'll give freely of her time, she is telling the truth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we're grateful.
Just one question, much like Donna, you've answered a couple of the subdivision things. It was interesting because I had wrote that down. You gave the 20-acre cutting off 10. You gave an excellent explanation of that. That's questioned a lot more than you think out in the community. So the State Land Evaluation Advisory Council, SLEC, or I think you referred to it, are we bound by their methodology with regards to land use? I mean, is that,
Oh, yeah.
okay, I mean, that is
It's
the
code,
goal.
it's code,
It's code, okay,
yeah,
all right, thank you.
yeah. And it's a fun read, boy.
I'm sorry.
It's a fun read.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, I got into about the 50th page of it, and I'm being facetious, and I thought, I don't understand this, I'm gonna ask Mary, but the inference was that, oh yeah, we gotta follow that, but, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. And I know we had a lot of people last year that wanted more information about land use. So having this on tape where people can go back and listen to this specific part of our meeting, I think is really important. And Supervisor Jeno, did I cut you off?
No.
No, okay. So really appreciate that. And I know you meet with citizens one-on-one that have questions and concerns, and, you know, it's like anybody can go in and meet with Mary, and I really appreciate that.
It's funny when I talk about how busy I am and how I can't get everything done and everything when I'm sitting with Dennis having coffee, he says, "Why don't you make appointments?" And I'm like, that's not how I work. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And feel free to just ask anything else when
We
you.
appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for all you do.
Yep, thank you. All right, next part of the agenda is public comment. And we, at the last board meeting, have decided that the chair will read this little statement. It sounds like the school board has been doing that for years. So this is the public comment portion. We are here to accomplish, and this is on BoardDocs if you're bored and want to read it. We are here to accomplish the business of local government for sake, and of course, my computer just went crazy. Sorry. Oh, there we go. We are here to accomplish the business of local government for the state of our citizens. We want to hear from our citizens, and this public comment period agenda item provides that opportunity. When speakers are called forward, the chair, please state your name and district. We also ask that your comments are limited to 3 minutes in order to provide equity to all speakers and to ensure our meeting is reasonable in length. If you have more information than can be summarized in 3 minutes, please provide leave-behind materials for the board's review. The chair will ask you to conclude your remarks if the time has elapsed. If you have any questions during the session, you may ask for clarification from your board member or county administration staff after the meeting is adjourned. So Mr. Curry will have a timer. Anyone wishing to speak, this is public comment, and it can be about anything.
Good afternoon, Deke Deacons, Stonewall District. I want to wish belated greeting to the new board. I have a tradition, a long-standing tradition of welcoming new board members. Last January, it went long, and I didn't get a chance to go long. So I want to welcome the board members. I have 2 items, and hopefully I'll get them done in 3 minutes. One is pretty pressing. Well, actually, they're both pretty pressing. The recent attack, the animal attack at Charming Hill Farm, resonates personally with me. In the past, at least twice, as early as 2015, as a builder, I was attacked on a job site. And I suffered some pretty good injuries as a result of it. This was crazy enough, this was during the sales presentation of this job. And I had all I can do to take the dog out at that moment. But anyhow, that memory is still pretty vivid in my mind. And I got to thinking about this after reading these articles. And I thought back the time I was a boy, and I got really well attacked. That's the past. I have a real-time condition right now. One of my daughters, 3 of our grandchildren live in the villages, one of the village. We have an active, real-time nuisance. Fortunately, thank God, the security cameras and stuff like that, it's on camera of my daughter being, if it hadn't been for a fence separating them, she'd have been attacked. This same particular problem resulted in one of the villagers being attacked. Now, I'll date myself here, but I came of age during the 60s, and we spent a lot of time in resistance. And I'm not one for layering laws on top of laws on top of laws. But this is an issue that has to be really looked at. And animals are bad enough. Interface that with a child, and all of a sudden it's a little too late. You're not taking the child to the vet. And it's a matter of time before something like that could happen. I had a dog years ago. I had a bear dog and a wolf dog. And a bear dog, I was the only one that I could go face to face with. And I remember looking at a historic village one time on a hot day. And this was in Norwegian Elk County, always gave one growl to strangers. I was the only one who could go face to face. Well, this child came up because he was so cuddly and a magnet. He gave one warning, bit the child in the face. Well, we spent 10 days off location waiting to be quarantined for that. All right, that's that issue.
Oh, click, please.
I'll wrap that up. Sorry for the anecdotes. Second issue, again, back to the, I'm total in opposition of the flock cameras. I have total respect and admiration for the Sheriff's Department. My family is deeply indebted to the Sheriff's Department, personally. The benefit doesn't equate the loss of our Fifth Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Margaret Bond, Piedmont District. First, I want to thank all of you supervisors for the job that you do. It's varied, it's time consuming, it's involved a lot of hours that nobody sees you spend on this stuff, and I have great respect and admiration for you, so thank you again, I can't say that enough. Second, I know that in the agenda we don't have the item for the broadband progress report that had been a standing item from what Christine Smith had requested to be on the agenda every week. I just feel that she had a good idea for including or asking that broadband report be included on the agenda. It gives another chance for the public to hear what's happening. We've actually been having some great progress in broadband. I'm hearing anecdotally that people are actually getting their little door tags now. It would be great if we could have that as a standing item on the agenda. The Broadband Authority doesn't meet regularly enough for that news to get out. This way it would ensure that adequate coverage of broadband issues. And that's all I'm asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, it's that time again.
I was wondering.
Let me do this first, please. Be quick.
Hi, Susan, good to see you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Glad it's the year the snake's gone.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Okay,
Name and district, please.
all right. Always forget. Susan Babcock, Hampton District. Okay, it's the year of the fire horse. So I'm addressing it to translate in your own way to the county, the way it's being operated. Momentum, confidence, independence, and bold forward movement. The fire adds passion, courage, and this is the one, and a strong drive for freedom. So please, can we not be like everybody else?
Thank you.
You summed that up perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. It's pretty cool.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
You forgot something for Art, so I'll give it to him after this. Don't worry about it. Hi, Donna McCon, Jackson District. I'm here on the issue about the dogs running at large. I know about the incident at Charming Hill. Actually, that was right down the street from me. I own a dog boarding facility, Golden Tree for Canines. I am also the president of a purebred dog rescue in the county, Colonial Newfoundland Rescue, so I have a lot of experience in dogs. I have seen over the past year, I have been out here since 1989, so I'm not a new citizen in the county, but just over the years, the running of dogs issue getting large, I am hoping that the board will consider changing the code to reflect more, to take off some of the sections about right now what it's stating is that dogs running at large can be running at large as long as they have a county ID tag and they have a rabies certificate. What I'm proposing to do for you guys to do, sorry, to change it basically that dogs are not allowed to run at large. And I'm not saying on their own property. Obviously, anybody can do what they want on their own property. But we're seeing a lot of dogs obviously getting off the property, killing livestock, hurting people, threatening people. This is not good. Unless they're in the custodians or the owners or the custodians' actual you know, that they're in charge of them, that they can control the dog while their dog is running loose on somebody else's property on the middle of 211. If you're out there with your dog and you can control your dog, so be it. But I'm seeing, you know, I hate to say Facebook, but a lot of stuff on Facebook. People are complaining about this all the time. I stop all the time for dogs. A lot of them run off. There's nothing that can be done. If I can catch the dog, I either take it back to my facility, call the sheriff's department, let them know that I've got the dog. If I can take it to Raw, I'll take it to Raw and let the sheriff's department know that I have the dog. Off hours, I ask them to come and get the dog. Yeah, it's just, it's getting crazy, and believe me, I understand, the issue with the sheriff's department. As I told Connie, this is nothing about her. There's other things that take priority. I know that when a dog is running at large, we're not gonna catch it. We don't expect them to go out and catch this dog all the time. And accidents happen, people's dogs get out. It's the repeat offenders, and you're seeing them a lot. And I can name some specific dogs, I'm not gonna go into that right now. But again, to change the, code about that the dogs cannot be running at large for any reason unless they are under the control of an owner or a custodian, and still have it, you know, that it's punishable by a fine, class 4 misdemeanor. Again, right now, the code is, and what I've heard from, and maybe Connie, I know I've got 6 seconds left. You know, when people call in, there's nothing that they can do. I don't believe that. I think the answer is it's going to be difficult for us to do anything. We have other crimes going on in the county. We don't have the personnel. And by the time we get out there, the dog's gone. So perfectly understandable. But I just think the code needs to be changed for people to try to adhere to the code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky Burr from Wakefield. For more than 30 years, my work has focused on privacy and information security law and policy. I'm not a privacy fundamentalist. I've represented a lot of companies that have a lot of data, and I believe in the power of data, including personal data, to improve lives. But I want to talk about the flock cameras on that ground. I'm not convinced that the cameras make sense. I can tell you every single person I've talked to in Rappahannock County thinks they make no sense whatsoever. And I'm not going to talk about the documented instances where the data from flock cameras has been misused. I'm sure you've seen it. What I do want to talk about is the process. Applying basic fair information practices that were promulgated by the United States 50 years ago. Any decision to deploy these cameras in Rappahannock should have been informed by transparent communication and community consultation, a written policy reflecting community input that governs deployment of the cameras and use of the data, that reflects basic fair information practices and ensures that residents understand what data is being collected, that members of the community are not being unfairly targeted, that we don't collect more data than we need or keep it for longer than we need it, and that we understand, agree, and can effectively control who has access to that data and for what purposes. In addition, the decision to enter into contract with Flock should have been based on an expert assessment of their commercial terms and conditions. I've read and written a lot of these contracts, and I can tell you they can be highly technical, convoluted, and sufficiently ambiguous as to permit very surprising and unintended uses of the data. I appreciate your willingness to take this issue up, and I urge you to ensure that any decision to continue use of the flock cameras reflects our values as a community and a reasonable balance between our personal privacy and public safety interests. Thank you. Thank you.
Image all that, and whoever invited Mary or whoever, great presentation, really, really useful information, and Yeoman Piedmont. Just wanted to give a very positive update on the tax project. So we've hit about $50,000 in combined state and federal refunds. But the more important figure, even though it's smaller, is we're about $10,000 in saving people fees. So they're not paying $200, $250, $300 or more to file their tax return. So keep having people come to us. People are starting to call more. This is good. Every Saturday at Washington Baptist by appointment, and we'd be happy to save people money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Betsy Deedle, Wakefield District. Thank you all for all you do. Thank you, Sheriff, for all you do with your team. But I would like to add my voice to the concerns that have been mentioned today about the flock cameras. I believe everybody I've talked to in the last week has voiced similar concerns. I'm not an expert like Becky Burr, but I think we need to take this under serious consideration before going any further. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any other hands in the courtroom. We've got a lot of people on Zoom. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak during public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, not seeing any Zoom hand. I will go ahead and close public comment. And we are moving into the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented in the agenda that we've already adopted.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving into appointments. Mr. Curry, do you want to explain how we got to the REMS Council Advisory Committee decision?
Yes, so Rappahannock EMS Council has served our community and many others in the region for many years. Over the last year or so, the state has opened up a process to seek efficiency and maybe rebirth of that EMS Council. And the REMS Council joined together with the Thomas Jefferson Council and then collapsed underneath the Northern Virginia, essentially, council. So Inverse is now the parent of a combined Rappahannock-Rapidan EMS Council. Historically, Rappahannock County has had 2 representatives on the REMS Council. Most localities in the region have appointed a career representative and a volunteer representative in those days. Now, we have only 1 slot available on an advisory council for the REMS, as it's being called. And the Inverse leadership has requested each county in the region to appoint a representative as soon as you can to serve in this new advisory council. The Public Safety Committee received my recommendation that your emergency services coordinator should be the county's representative, who's positioned to represent both volunteer and career interests. Public Safety Committee ratified that and confirmed that recommendation. The association did hear and discuss the topic, but did not put forward any recommendations for appointment. So before you right now is the opportunity to appoint Mr. Stevens as your REMS advisory appointee.
Madam Chair, as the chair of the County Public Safety Committee, I move that we appoint Darren Stevens to the new REMS Inverse governance body with gratitude for his willingness to serve, and we're lucky to have him.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? This isn't with regards to the county population. This is just the new process REMS is going through that we only have one person and there's not a backup and
There are so many localities involved now, it would be
impossible.
unwieldy to have two per county, so one per county. And I think there'll be subcommittees that will form over time where other individuals have an opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Old business courthouse project, and I see that Glave and Holmes is online. Is that Andrew?
With any luck, we can get the audio to work. If Andrew's, oh, of course not. Hold on one second.
Please hold.
Give that a try, Andrew. We had the same problem at the last meeting. I'm not sure what the issue is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Try it again. I'm gonna have to go to backup here in a second. Try one more thing. How about now? All right, stand by. I bought a new speaker just in case this happens. You get that?
We have the backup.
Yeah.
Do you need water, Gary? Yes.
You good? I hope.
Thank you so very much.
I'm good, thanks.
I did, I noticed those when I walked in.
What's that?
I noticed those when I walked in.
Yep.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
Yeah.
All right, Andrew, let's try that one more time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey.
All right.
And let me get your.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yep, I am ready.
All right.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here to have the second part of our revised concept presentation. The first part we did back last month, and presented the basic idea of inverting the courthouse program and placing the courtrooms and the waiting areas on the lower level. And we are now following up with the estimated cost implications of that revised concept. So, Gary, to the next slide. So just as a very brief recap, what you're looking at here are what we're calling the May 2025 concept on the left, which is the three-level concept with the courtrooms on the upper level, And then the middle level, which is ground level, is where the clerks would be housed in the main entry. And then the lower level would be the prisoner holding area as well as the mechanical space. And just to clarify that for all purposes of discussion today, the unexcavated portion is not unfinished basement, but rather it is just grade, and then there'll be a retaining wall between that and the portions of the basement that are occupied. And then on the right is the revised concept that we presented last month, basically compacting the program into 2 levels. When I say compacting, it's basically the same building area, but it's on 2 levels instead of 3. And the upper level is the clerk's, upper and grade level, I should say, is the clerk's offices, largely same configuration, and then the lower level would be the courtrooms.
Just say the detailed floor plans and presentations are within the link to last month's meeting. You can pull those up. These are just kind of a catch-up to get you caught up where we were at the end of the last meeting.
Correct, thank you. Go to the next slide. And then just some graphics showing point of comparison. The top image here shown is the May 2025 concept, 2 levels above grade and then 1 level below grade, and then the revised concept as presented in February. And then the next slide. And then the board has also asked us to look at not only the inverted plan, but also a variation that would be called more austere, and that involves removing the cupola and the front portico facing onto Gay Street. You can see the comparison resulting from that change here. Next slide. Okay, and now this is the bottom line roll of numbers that we have gained from Downey and Scott, our cost consultant. You can see in the top portion of this table the May 2025 concept. We had a program area of 24,640 gross square feet. And then I'm signifying that we are not using a finished basement, or an unfinished basement rather. So that's reading 0 square feet. Total building then nets at 24,640, same as the program area. And then the construction cost of that option is $19.2 million. And by the way, this is unit costs have been updated from the May 2025 estimate to today's dollars, so that we get an apples to apples comparison with the revised concept costs.
Andrew, sorry, it's Keir. During that period of board discussion, you say you've had to bring this up to today's dollars. Do you have the difference where we were in May versus today?
And that's
in the average is 2.1 million, or sorry, 2.1%.
Okay.
So the May number compatible was 18,826,000.
Okay.
Say that again, Gary, I'm sorry.
It's right in the narrative of the agenda item. This number was 18,826,168. I don't know that we really know it's 8 or 9, but so you can see that's essentially inflation between the 2 dates.
Right. Inflation, and also, I will say that, Downey and Scott looks carefully at the numbers every time. It's not just a straight line.
Sure.
Inflation, sometimes there's changes in individual line items that are market specific. So it's a little bit more nuanced than just a straight line inflation increase. But it averaged out to 2.1%. And then the February 26th concept, you can see the cost implications there. The program area total building that we're working with is actually 25,150. Functionally the same, or I'm considering to be essentially the same. And we can tweak things to get it probably closer to an exact number, but I think it's pretty darn close, within 2% right now. And then the total construction of option 1, which is with the portico and cupola, comes out to $17,000,000 17.9 million, or a savings of about 1.3 million, or 6.7%. And then there's a incremental savings, further savings of removing the portico and the cupola of about $342,000, bringing you to a total construction cost of 17.5 or 17.6 rounding up million, and a savings of 8.5%. And then just for discussion purposes, you might ask where were the savings achieved? And that's what we find in the next slide. All of these numbers are approximate, I would say plus or minus 10%, just because of the way the nuances are working in the estimating. But what we're seeing is significant savings in concrete and masonry. That's basically because of the way that the exterior walls are changing from a 3-story building to a 2-story building. Also in steel, we're seeing savings there, significant savings. The thermal and moisture barriers has to do with the roof changes. And then we have significantly fewer windows in this project, so that's a significant savings in windows cost. And then finally, there's one change that may or may not have been intentional. When we showed the site plan on the May 25 concept, we had a much larger plaza. And for reasons that are maybe not entirely intentional, we reduced the size of that plaza, and so it got significantly smaller, and that saved quite a bit of money. So we can talk about whether that's a desirable savings or not, but that is reflected in the current cost, is that reduction in the plaza size. So that's where we're seeing the big impact of savings, and I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Mr. Geno?
Sure, yeah, thank you for this, and the hard numbers are good to look at. This is the first time I've ever done this in my life, and hopefully the last. And you've obviously done this more than we have, and so the question I would have, let's say we look at the 4 options and pick one, and say that's the direction we think we should go. Is the next step sort of some type of value engineering process where we would, it doesn't seem like that's appropriate for a board like this to sit and talk about what kind of tile or, we're gonna put in, but it seems like we should have some kind of working committee or something that goes through this, what you, not this presentation, but what was in our minutes in detail and talks about a lot of these details. What does the county do typically, in working through those kinds of decisions?
That's not a question for me or for Gary.
That was for you, or Gary, whoever's worked through this before.
I think ultimately it can be what the board wants. These are concept plans. We haven't even come close to talking about fit and finish. Is it terrazzo? Is it vinyl composite tile? And so those decisions are left to be made during the design process. And Downey and Scott made certain assumptions. I don't know what they are, but their cost report is attached, which is extremely detailed. And so it's a target on that cost, and the actual design between now and that final design will dictate, what the final cost estimate is, and then it'll drive what the bid price is, which is the real cost. So I think, yes, there needs to be some involvement other than just Andrew's team and me on those fit and finish sort of things. I think Rappahannock County is probably not mahogany and marble, but we're probably also not, plywood and the cheapest linoleum we can find. So somewhere in the middle, and the way the RFP was discussed was that we want to look at life cycle costs. We want to look at the total cost of ownership of these materials. If terrazzo is cheapest over 30 years, that's probably what we want to do rather than replace floor every 10 years. But that comes with our ability to afford that. And those analyses will have to be done throughout the design cycle.
That's right. And just to add on to that a bit, it's always, every project we have, regardless of our project type, there's a conversation about value. And the place where we are right now is conceptual level and certain assumptions about customary components and levels of finish that would go into a courthouse in Virginia. And, you know, there is a range there, perhaps a narrow range, but there is a range. And the value judgments are not just aesthetic, but they're also, as Gary alluded to, life cycle. You know, this is an institutional building that's intended to be, you know, in place for decades, if not longer. And we want to make wise choices accordingly, you know, to give the county the best value for the taxpayers' dollars.
And I should add that the state has told us, you know, Dylan and everything, we will apply green building standards. And so this building has to meet one of a few different standards. LEED is probably the one that will be easiest for us to accomplish. And so that's a requirement now that came on board 2-3 years ago from the state for local government buildings over a certain size.
Well, thanks for that. So the process would be, we would sort of select a design concept and then begin working through all of those kinds of
I'm not sure who we is. I would rather not do that during called public meetings with 5 board members trying to decide what color the floor is, but.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
But
getting at.
definitely there'll be a process.
Okay.
Andrew, since we're talking about bottom line there, I'll flip the switch to aesthetics, just for a little break. Something perhaps more interesting to some people. Just looking at the drawings of the two concepts, I appreciate the austerity measures applied, and I know we asked for that specifically, and if my math is right, you knock off the cupola and the portico and you gain about 2% of the value of the more, call it, elaborate building. You reduce the overall cost by 2%, so it's not insignificant, but it's not quite de minimis. So my question to you is, I'm trying to decide the approach we want to go. Just from a aesthetic perspective, you look at our existing courthouse, you look at the revenue commissioner's building, you look at the treasurer's building, and they're all flat on the front. And I guess since you're the architect, what's your gut on portico, cupola, height, no jut out on the front when the other buildings on Courthouse Road are effectively flat on the front? But recognizing the courthouse is taller than everything else. The existing courthouse is taller than everything else. I just want your opinion from a design perspective.
Right. I think that there's a couple of things going on. One is that we're looking at the immediate context of the Courthouse Row and the series of buildings there. You clearly have, even in this image that's on the screen, you can understand that the historic courthouse that you're currently sitting in has an elevated level of civic presence on the green than the more subservient secondary buildings, right? They're more modest buildings. And so the question would be, where should the new courthouse be positioned in that range? In my opinion, I think that we have taken one step towards diminishing its civic presence by converting the 3-story, 3-level building into a 2-level building. But we've somewhat counteracted that by putting a little more, I guess, emphasis or presence into its portico, the image that you see in the lower part of the screen. And then related but not entirely tied to it is the notion of a cupola. You know, that's just a device, an architectural device that you see in civic buildings, whether you're talking about a government building or a church or a city hall or anything. You know, any building that has civic presence, you know, putting a cupola is an easy and a recognizable element to announce a civic presence. So, in my opinion, when you go to the no cupola, no portico version of it, I feel like you've swung the needle a little bit too far in the the reduction in civic presence, and it starts to look a little more like a utilitarian building, or a secondary building. And, in my opinion, I would encourage the county to have pride in its new courthouse, and maybe swing the dial back a little bit in the other direction, and include that portico and cupola. I would say the portico also has a practical rationale, which is just getting out of the weather as you're approaching the building, and having those kind of classic courthouse steps conversations with your attorney, or you're gathering your party before you go into the courtroom. I think that having that threshold space that's undercover is actually got some practical use as well. So, yes, from my opinion, that's what it is.
Keep in mind, just to the left of this courthouse will be the old Methodist church, which has what might have been a bell tower at one point in time, but.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Thanks, Andrew.
Happy to help.
Yeah, that's great.
So Andrew, this is Debbie. When I'm looking at the two options right now, it looks like we've gone from 21,000 square feet to 25,000 on 2 levels versus 21,000 on 24,000 on 3 levels. I'm looking at the main areas and wondering who got smushed the worst. Because I do notice there are different square footages of different offices. So how have we made it uncomfortable, I guess is the biggest question, in option 2 that we just had you do?
Yeah, I don't think that we've, I don't think that we have gone through the level of evaluating room by room, is the 10% reduction a deal killer, or the 20%, 10% increase excessive? I think there's another layer of analysis that we need to do just to revisit it. Let me put it this way. The way that we developed this concept, this revised concept, was to be as close as possible within reason to the original program that's embedded in the the May 25 concept. And so there may be some variations from room to room, but it's not necessarily intentional that we're making a decision that we're reducing something by some percent or raising it by some percent. I think that my professional opinion is that since we have slightly larger footprint, slightly larger total area in the revised concept than we do in the original concept, we should be able to make it work.
Which leads me to the other question. In the original, we had the basement that allowed for part of it to be used and part of it not finished, but does not finished mean not there?
That means not there.
Okay.
So it could be there, but you'd have to pay, I want to say it was $800,000 or $900,000 to have it excavated and have a basement shell be there for some future purpose.
And once, kind of maybe a dumb question, but if we decided to forego that kind of excavation work on the front end, once the building's built, I assume we've missed that opportunity.
It would be much more cost effective to tack something onto the side, yeah.
Okay.
The reason I ask is there's really no room for growth on the 2 levels. There's not a hidden corner that somebody could be in. And I keep going back to, although our Commonwealth attorney was very kind to say he could stay in his office where he is, at some point, somebody might want to be in that building. Yeah. And I like both designs. And I agree with Andrew on the look on the outside, but I do worry about not having any room for change.
Really good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Rewinding back into the process, for our individual department areas, we did build in trajectory of growth for staffing. So like if you look in the clerk's office, there's built-in workstations for projected staff in those particular places. What's not built in is a wholesale, added department. Like if you decided to wanna bring the whole Commonwealth's attorney over here, that would be problematic.
Or if the combined clerk were to be juvenile domestic relations and general district.
Right, you split it apart and tried and had dual purpose, yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
That's another question.
Go for it.
Yeah, so Andrew, I'm looking at the revised concept, and we're sitting in the courtroom right now looking out at the snow falling out of completely open windows, wide open windows. Are the windows complete windows in the courtroom with the revised concept? I know that's set down, but it looks like we can have sort of full windows in the courtroom.
Yeah, so it's, we did the elevation on the, south elevation there, the side that's down. And we intentionally put the sill of the window so it would be above your eye level if you were on the ground next to the building. So they're high, but they're still fairly sizable. On the other side, they could actually be full height because you're pretty far out of the ground at that point, even with a sill that would be, let's say, at the back of the jury box chairs. So I'm pretty confident we'll get a decent amount of light into each of the courtrooms.
And that does require some retaining walls on the southern side, and that was in the site plan from last time.
That's right. Where we're going to be, natural light challenge, admittedly, is in the waiting rooms. So, just because those are subterranean, and we're going to bring down as much light as we can through the open stair, but that still is going to be, you don't have the opportunities for views from those spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Andrew?
The 2.1% increase, that is as of right now?
That is from the May 25 to February 26 time frame.
I'm gonna reiterate, I know I've said it in multiple meetings, the average cost of construction increases somewhere between 2.7 and 3% annually. If we're not to May 2026 yet, and this price tag has already gone up 2.1%. I'm just gonna say that once again.
The frequently asked question document the staff prepared for you, look back at the construction cost index put together by Engineering News Record and forecasted that same thing out, and I think the number was $790,000 a year that not moving forward will cost you. No, I mean, if you never move forward, it won't cost you anything, but you'll have other consequences.
Well,
just our job.
It actually has consequences.
Other consequences, yeah, other consequences.
I don't have any questions for Andrew, just more of a statement. Well, I do have a question for Garrett. Garrett, you say the unfinished basement piece of it, if we were to finish that or leave it open space, put concrete, dig it out, was 800 and something?
My recollection's 800 to 900,000. We can go back to the older
Yeah, that's
document,
okay. I was trying to find it, but I
believe it was $150 a square foot. That was, 5,400 square feet? So that sounds about right. Yep.
First of all, being one of the new folks on the board here and watching last year, the board, previous members as well, kind of work through this and tease it out to get to this point. Just get more of a comment is that we're at a point now where I believe we have what we need for the most part to, Madam Chair, the next meeting, maybe we're posture ourselves or be in a position to move forward with one of these projects. At least in concept as a first step, unless there's some other conversation that's going to tease out a cost savings and or issue with the current work that's been done by Andrew and his folks. I do believe the front of the building with the cupola and the covered part is, I just think that fits in with the aesthetics of Washington and the building next door, as Gary indicated. Last thing we want is to build something and then we look at it and say, we just, it matters what it looks like and how it fits into this community in Rappahannock County. So more of a statement, Madam Chair, really not a question. I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around some of the previous conversation the previous board had, but I think we're in a good position.
Just a second. The next step, if I understand it correctly, if we could decide today that we wanted to go forward with one or both or whatever, is Glavian Homes having a citizen gathering day.
The original scope not the original, the most recent scope that, for the concept contemplated a community meeting of some sort to share documentation, share information in a way that folks can come in and ask questions, maybe become a little more informed of why it's necessary and why certain decisions have been made to this point for concept. The intent there would be, A, to help inform the board in your difficult decision, but B, to put maybe the citizens at ease some that you have done your homework and that a lot of their questions are answered. They just have to be in a position to ask them.
Madam Chair, for discussion or a decision, I'll put forward a motion that we forward for the purpose of the community meeting contemplated in the current scope with Glavian Homes, the revised concept review today that includes the portico and cupola, and we take that to a public community meeting to get input from the citizens.
All right, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion. I'm hoping we can do this in April at the latest.
You have a plate full of meetings over the next couple months with the budget. We'll work hard to try to find a time to make this work for your schedule, Glavian Home's schedule, and venue schedule.
And I think before we had talked about doing it on a Saturday and basically having a couple of different sessions, one in the morning and one in like the late afternoon, so citizens were given opportunities to be at least one of those.
Yeah, well, at the risk of following other public meetings, I envisioned an opportunity where the information and the experts are present and people can wander in and out without a lecture, presentation, if you will. But
available to answer questions.
Yeah, and so it'll be a core period of time, 10 to 2 or something like that in a Saturday. And if it's a nice enough day, then maybe outside.
Yep.
If not, the RAC has allowed us to use their theater if that was appropriate and available.
All right. Any other discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask a clarifying question? I mean, so if we go down this road, we're going down the road of the 2 floors, the revised concept, and it would be difficult to back up and go back to the 3 floors after this, just to be clear.
Yes.
So it'd be very difficult once we sign an agreement with Glavian Homes for the full design package. And so once we do that, there's an iterative design process that starts. This is very concept-based, and it starts getting more and more detailed. There's basically 3 steps. And so the further you go down that path, the more money you're going to flush if you decide to change tracks. So you do have opportunities to change. It's just how much money do you not want to invest in this project and rather just use for no good reason.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Just reinforcing what Gary says, there's kind of 2 opposing curves. One that goes up, which is cost of making changes, and the other one is the time, as you go, through the process. So, there's a point at which you start to be able to make changes really easily, and then you stop being able to make those changes. That's one comment. My question for the board would be, you may recall that we have some fairly detailed photorealistic renderings of the 3-story, 3-level scheme. draw those images for the reduced height. I just want to make the observation that if we present to the public, it will be based on these two-dimensional color elevations that you see now. We don't have that rendering to show. And I guess the question would be, do you want to contemplate commissioning those renderings prior to the public meeting?
Let me get a vote on the motion, and we'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah, no hurry.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I don't recall what the rendering, how expensive that was. I do believe that some of the shortfalls in the past was not having clear expectations or setting clear expectations with the renderings. So I hesitate not to spend a little money, maybe out of our board fund, to make that happen.
So the image on the screen is essentially what he's talking about, that sort of level of detail.
I think it's important.
I think it is too.
You have pretty adequate board contingency dollars available.
Yep.
In this fiscal year. And you have a number of meetings coming up, so Andrew and I can work out the details and bring you that detail so you can formally approve it at a subsequent meeting.
Good.
Thank you. All right, all done with Andrew? Thank you very much, Andrew. Really appreciate your expertise.
Take care.
All right. Chester Gap Volunteer Fire Department. So I can say this is obviously a continued conversation with regards to the agreement with Warren County and with Chester Gap. It is, we'll know tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, but there is great potential, I think, that Warren County will provide funding to cover 3 months of what we've been doing for them for 3 months, which gives us time and them time to get through their budget conversations to understand what they could potentially commit to. In conversations that I've had, we all agreed that we can't keep doing this 3 month thing. So we would know definitively by the end of budget season, end of May, I guess, if we have an agreement to go forward or not, because that agreement I asked we'd start discussing it in April, so that there would be a memorandum of understanding that we could move forward with as soon as the votes happen in May. But won't know for sure until tomorrow if the Warren County Board agrees to appropriate that. It's $45,000 basically for the 3 months.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this was yesterday?
Partially, there's been multiple one-on-one conversations.
Is it going to be put on their agenda to discuss? I mean,
It's on there.
It's on there, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that was something we were a little perplexed about. I'm glad they got it on the agenda. And I want to recall some of our previous conversation, if in fact they were to put it on the agenda, and Kier certainly helped me out on this. You may recall, if in fact they agreed to take care of the next quarter, we could push this down the road a little bit further. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, because I have this gut feeling that we're going to come at the end of that period, we're going to be in the same position that we are in now. I just throw that out there, but we did say in that meeting, and for the folks that are not here today, and some of those folks are from the Wakefield District and Chester Gap Fire Department, that unless Warren County had some movement, we were going to move forward with this. And that may have been our message in our Public Safety Committee as well. Unfortunately, we don't know that today.
Right.
Mr. Whitson asked me, how would you potentially deal with the fact that your meeting's today and Warren County's meeting is tomorrow? And I suggested you could take contingent action. And that would send a strong signal to Warren County that if A, then B. So you can easily form a motion to do that.
Right.
And, or you could take any number of actions, but that's one way you could handle the fact of the 2 meetings being out of proper sequence.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can say that Supervisor Cullors, who's the chairman of the Warren Board, Chief Brown, and President Williams are all focused, as am I, on trying to make sure the citizens that are kind of caught in the middle is the way I look at it. If Chester Gap goes away and Warren County has more of a distance to cover to get to those citizens, there is a time gap. And I think they're working hard to try to make sure that gap doesn't occur. But we understand that chiefs can have their own, chiefs of battalions, can have their own strategic plan and vision of what his or her department looks like in fire and rescue, and may convince the Board of Supervisors that having everybody in the house under one person's watch is the way to go.
I believe we also set a tentative date, and Mr. Stevens is here. I believe Supervisor Whitson asked how quickly could we have this turnaround. I believe it was March 17th or so. I don't know why that date sticks in my mind.
30 days.
It was 30.
Was it 30 days? I don't know why it has.
That was, yeah, we were contemplating setting the trigger date at March 17th. Mainly because it's St. Patrick's Day, but also, no, really it was because they meet twice and that was a working session, but with I think Supervisor Settle, you and I both recognized the distinct lack of inertia that seemed to be clouding the picture over in Warren County. It came out of that Chester Gap meeting, and so we moved the date up to the first meeting in March is the cutoff.
And they're well aware of it in their agenda item. You can see what was written up, and they have made the comment that we would be having our vote today. So they're well aware.
One thing that we should not lose sight of, and Mr. Curry likely would have the number in mind pretty quickly. We've been paying Warren County share
Since October.
for a while. So this is already on the agenda in the Warren County Board to commit to three prospective months of funding, but with no recognition of what we've done on their behalf to date for the last quarter of 2025. And there lies a fundamental inequity, and there lies strong opinions from many constituents who I've heard from who said, why are we floating a program with our tax dollars for Warren County? And I want to be as careful and even-handed as possible in how we decide to move forward here, because obviously it is also an important fiscal point to make. Mr. Stevens and I had some back and forth on the cost difference, and Mr. Curry's provided some of those details. If we were to move a paid provider program to Flint Hill versus a shared program that Warren County funded in part, operationally, I think it makes a lot of sense to move the program to Flint Hill for the citizens of Rappahannock County. Fiscally, it's going to cost more. That's true. It's going to cost more if you move it to Flint Hill. So, those questions will have to be reconciled as we can communicate with our constituents. That is, yes, you will be getting effectively three centers of paid providers: Sperryville, ALS 1400 based at the Sheriff's Department, and then Flint Hill. So that bodes well for reduced response times in Rappahannock County proper. But I also recognize we have a population center at Chester Gap that likely will see longer response times. But I don't want to forget there that Warren County continues to be a good partner, and in times of need, they'll come over and assist. So All that said, it's gonna cost more to move the program to Flint Hill. Operationally, it would be an improvement, I think, overall. And Warren County, in my view, owes us money for the last quarter of 2025. So it's really hard for me to get enthusiastic about a vote, I guess, tomorrow in Warren County
Tomorrow
Correct.
afternoon.
Do we,
on 3 months of prospective funding, which comes to $45,000, that then that impedes Mr. Stevens' ability to implement a program that's gonna benefit the citizens of Rappahannock County proper. So I'm stuck, and I would love to find a clear way in my mind to a motion to move forward. I just maybe someone else can help me here.
do we know also what, I'm turned off by any 50-50 split as well, knowing how much, the calls are Warren County heavy. So everything, just to piggyback on what Supervisor Woodson just said, I was thinking the exact same thing. Well, they kind of owe us. We did them a solid for a good 6 months. And
When I was speaking with Supervisor Cullors, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Brown, I basically said, if we're going to do this and Warren County is going to move forward, we at least have to get together in April and come up with what that agreement would be. Because we don't have an agreement moving forward. That was last July, I think. So we have got to put together an agreement that both counties believe is fair, understanding that, and I know we've talked about this, especially in public safety, this could happen again with a change in board members or a change in mood. So an agreement is really, if we move forward on an MOU, it's only guaranteed for a year. I personally thought your tactic here made sense. If you're still in agreement with that. I do feel like Chester Gap is trying to hang on to being able to help in some way up there. And if we decide that we don't want to give them extra time, I think that I would find that as, Chief Brown's been doing this for over 30 years, kind of a slap in the face. If the money's going to be paid. If they don't agree to the vote tomorrow, it's done.
And let me just make sure to clarify for everybody, the $45,000 is the Warren County share of the old agreement costs, which is not the new higher staffing costs. So it was a 60-40 split. And when Chester Gap leadership shared with the Board of Supervisors, this Board of Supervisors, that they could not retain and attract staffing at the rate of pay that they were paying that was contemplated in the agreement with Rappahannock County and Warren County. This board agreed to increase their funding to allow them to increase their rate of pay closer to what we fund our ALS 1400. Warren County did not do that. So with the $45,000, that means that Rappahannock County is paying maybe half, Warren County pays maybe 40%, and Chester Gap is paying the balance to close the gap. And that would happen prospectively for whatever 3-month can kick, if you will, if that is the decision the board made.
Thank you, Gary, for that. Another part of the conversation took place, what we found out, what was teased out from the meetings that we had, Chester Gap was using other funds just to make ends meet. So we're looking at, Warren County, I believe, provides 37, 38,000 up to 45.
39 to 44.
Fluctuates,
Yep.
but dipping into that pot of money to help offset provider cost is to keep 24/7. And there may have been some other areas too where they were pulling funds that were meant for operational costs, maintenance, or what have you. And Chief Brown and President Williams both were pretty clear about that and very transparent about that. So that's not part of this conversation. So I think moving forward, I like the idea of contingent motion, if in fact Warren County surprises us all tomorrow. But that's only the first piece of it. The second piece of it is getting our head wrapped around, what percentages, because that has to be revamped. That has to be rethought out. Yeah.
And the 39 to 44,000, depending on, I think it's calls are on or something, is how Warren County justifies that. They don't tell them it has to be used for operations or it has to be used for capital. It's just here, thank you for the mutual aid, and they're on automatic aid for calls. So in Warren County's mind, that is paying for part of the operational cost. But you are correct, Chief Brown, and I haven't seen the numbers, but it was over the past 4 years or something, close to $300,000 that Chester Gap themselves has put towards the program to make sure it doesn't die.
I thought he said that was capital, but you might, regardless, it's,
Yep.
we're spending more money.
They counted on it, Chester Gap always counted on it as being capital, but based on their bottom line, they've had to use it.
And the most recent audit showed that there's very little in the bank at Chester Gap right now. And so they're really cash flow-based operation. As EMS cost recovery comes in from ambulance billing, or as funding from Rappahannock County or Warren County for I think it's 44,000, that's all they get, that's all they have.
Madam Chair, and I should have thought of looking at the Warren County Board agenda before we met today. Can you describe the agenda item?
It's actually a one-pager.
I mean, is there contemplated action simply to reconsider the Chester Gap agreement, or is it very specific in that, let's please consider providing or appropriating funds for 3 more months to the tune of $45,000, because
it's the latter. It's very specific.
Because where I'm stuck, and I think this is a really good discussion, and I want to land on something that is respectful toward to the citizens of Chester Gap, but also that is respectful to the broader community of taxpayers in Rappahannock County. And since I chair the Public Safety Committee, the motion made and agreed upon unanimously, I think, was basically that if the Warren County Board of Supervisors fails to recommit to the Chester Gap Volunteer Fire Department paid EMS provider funding tomorrow, then we're going to move forward with our Flint Hill program. That's what came out of the Public Safety Committee. And what I understand is that they're not going to consider the broader question, and they're going to impede our ability to get moving on a Flint Hill program by basically saying, we'll put a little money in the mix to buy more time.
It is budget season, so kind of understand both sides.
And we've already we've extended our coverage twice, and I don't like being strung along, and I respect and like Supervisor Cullors a lot, and I'm grateful that she's made this effort, 11th hour.
New board.
Yeah, but it leaves me very concerned when I hear from people who say, why are we continuing to pay for this? And this is basically us continuing to pay more than we should without any accommodation for what we've covered in the past. And it doesn't sound like what they're discussing tomorrow has embedded within it any consideration of their lack of funding for, since when? October 1st?
October. I'm looking at their agenda and the attachment. And if I read theirs correctly, at the end of it, it says, I move that the Board of Supervisors allocate $45,300 to the Chester Gap Volunteer Fire Department. So it looks like maybe that is what, like I said, if I'm reading it correctly, and then they have their memorandum of agreement to review.
And that's the old version that they're just as background, I think.
Yeah, and any contingent action we take today, framed the way it came out of the Public Safety Committee, is wholly misaligned with what the Warren County Board would vote on tomorrow. It's a complete mismatch.
But certainly, whatever action this board takes, if any, will be conveyed to Warren County representatives, and they can do with it what they like, as you are left to do with your job with what they've laid on your table.
And so, Madam Chair, you said in passing, and I appreciate this is your district and these are your constituents. So I want to be mindful of that, because frankly, the district I represent is would benefit greatly from paid providers at Flint Hill. But I respect so much Chief Brown and President Williams for what they've continued to try to do on behalf of that population center at Chester Gap. My question to you is, you said, you referred to a slap in the face. If we took a particular action, I want to be clear on what you think would be disrespectful to the great leadership of Chief Brown and President Williams in this context.
The way I look at it, thank you for that, is they are fighting to stay above water and save lives. And they have a little glimmer of hope with the potential vote tomorrow to be able to come up with an agreement that works for them, Warren County and Rappahannock County, obviously with us involved, to not give them the opportunity to give this a chance to bloom a new relationship. I just feel like Chief Brown has put his heart and soul in this. He's the one that manages it. He's doing all the hiring, and it's crazy, all the work he has to do. And you're right, if we bring it here, Mr. Stevens and his team have to hire the paramedics and manage that for Flint Hill. And Flint Hill's never done this before. So this will be volunteers working with paid, which we know, everybody knows, can be a challenge at first. I think Sperryville's done a great job. But to me, it's giving them the potential on a sure thing that they know already works for 3 months versus transitioning to Flint Hill and saying, sorry, Chester Gap, we appreciate what you've done for 4 years, but we don't think we should put the effort there anymore.
You could just as a maybe middle space here to bring the board together, you could potentially accept the extension of the program for a month. And then if you don't have a firm long-term agreement by, whatever April date, then say you'll let the program run out for those next 2 months, but during those 2 months is when your local team will be ramping up the program. So you could say, agreement now for 3 months of payment. We'll run this program for 3 months. If you don't have a broader agreement to actually extend the program into the coming year or years by whatever April date you want, then that decision point is made and you'll move on to somewhere else.
I do think originally we had an April date. It was our April board meeting.
Yeah.
So that was where funding is extended to right now, April 6th.
Right. Okay, so let me make sure I'm tracking. Yes, I understood that funding is currently through April 6th. if tomorrow, if Warren County chooses not to participate in this again, I don't think there's any further discussion. Now, to your point, and kind of maybe a middle, kind of to make everyone feel better about a possible transition, if they come back and they say, okay, we'll enter into this agreement again, maybe we do it for another 3 months, because the reality is, we all know it is budget season. So we know how many meetings we have on the books, how many we just put on the books for the courthouse. I'm sure Warren County has a similar list, a similar calendar. So that would give, if they will pony up half for at least 3 months, then that gives us all 3 months to negotiate an agreement that we like. Because at least, like I said, I think Warren County owes a little bit more than half. But if that helps make the transition safer for our citizens, more clear for the leadership, more comfortable for both counties, to like the agreement that they enter in, I'm for doing that. I don't know how I can make that a motion. I don't know what other discussion we need, but.
Go ahead.
Could I just mention,
Yeah,
I think the motion that's in the recommended action is that we move to direct, basically that we take the Public Safety Committee's recommendation if they don't approve. And that may be the only motion we have to do. We're not going to say what we'll do if they do approve the funding.
Sure.
And so, so we may be trying to overcomplicate the decision we have to make today.
Right.
We just.
Yeah,
I think,
I'm sorry, you, please.
No, I think John has simplified it, kind of getting back to what I said originally. We left that glimmer of hope. It's been characterized in a few different ways. And, we would move on with this transition unless Warren County comes to the table, and it looks like they are. I don't have a warm fuzzy feeling about that tomorrow, other than just the $45,000, but that doesn't solve our problem. So I think we simplify it and then look at the next steps. Ideally, it'd been nice to handle that today, but we can't control scheduling. Because that entire agreement has got to be renegotiated, and we may find some other hurdles there, and that's what concerns me as well. I say, well, we'll do the old one, but we're back in the same situation. Listen, just for the benefit of the board and the data supports moving it to Flint-Hill, and the analysis of it, and thank Darren for helping with that, and the sheriff's office with Lieutenant Jenkins, and they dug in and brought the data. And frankly, I might have been one that was thinking that data can't be right, but it's accurate, because I'm real familiar with Chester Gap for years, and it is a complex community and citizens that deserve maybe that last glimmer of hope. And then the other piece of it is this is going to cost more to move to Flint Hill. I knew it was portrayed maybe on the front end, it was going to be just a wash. And that wasn't because anyone was trying to paint that picture. But it is going to be more. There's a budgetary piece of this. When we're sitting and we're talking and these other entities, the schools and public safety, and we're going to have to cut you here or there, and then we're going to spend another $100 and some thousand just to move it. So it's more conversation to get. I got long-winded for a short explanation.
So John, was that a motion? I don't remember. You were just kind of reading it off.
No, I read the
Okay.
recommended action.
Okay.
But,
And Supervisor Janot, I spoke just a minute ago about a mismatch or misalignment between our contemplated action here and what's on the Warren County Board's agenda for tomorrow. And I just want to understand, and totally appreciate your insight and your effort here to simplify, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I'm happy to make a motion. I just want to make sure that I'm picking up on the nuance of your thinking here, because again, this action contemplated today comes out of the Public Safety Committee, which hinges on, and this goes to Gary Curry's comment about maybe finding some middle ground, but if they fail to recommit paid EMS provider funding, and no matter what, they're not going to do that tomorrow, even under the best circumstances. So with that, what is the contingent action tied to from a Warren County perspective? Is it $45,000 and then we'll revisit this later? Or is it we're asking them to go beyond what's in their agenda and come up with something else that aligns with what on the Public Safety Committee we're essentially requiring them to do by tomorrow?
Your point's well taken. That's on Ms. Colors. She was at that town hall, and I agree. I think she was great. There's no question she's in support of this, of what existed in Warren County and transition with new board members. But it's all shame on them if we were very clear that our backs are against the wall, and so for them to say, well, we'll give them the 45,000, punt this down the road, to me, that's unacceptable. Hopefully tomorrow will generate more conversation for them to continue in their budget session and their work sessions to say, listen, we got to solve this problem with EMS in Warren County on the south end in Chester Gap. And with that, and maybe that's something that can be communicated to the board, saying, listen, we're ready to move on, but we gave that good faith last opportunity. That'll be tomorrow.
Let me try a motion.
Okay.
I'll put forward a motion to direct the Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue Department to implement Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue Company station staffing as recommended by the Public Safety Committee if the Warren County Board of Supervisors fails to, one, provide immediate funding to extend their support for the existing program at their March 3rd, 2026 meeting, and two, fails to recommit and renegotiate an agreement with Rappahannock County. I'll just say this, and number two is fails to recommit to the Chester Gap Volunteer Fire Department paid EMS provider funding program at their regular meeting in April. So we expect to see action from them tomorrow on extended funding, and we also expect them to vote to recommit to the program as a whole at their April meeting. And I'm sure Mr. Curry will.
That's clear. Independent of the paid EMS program and the costs for the paid EMS program, there's been wide discussions on the overall cost for Chester Gap Volunteer Fire and Rescue. That the services are being provided, generally 60% in Warren County and 40% in Rappahannock County. Rappahannock County, through the nature of your services agreement, pays 100% of operational costs. And that's where earlier I suggested perhaps at least a 50-50 split of the whole ball of wax makes sense. This motion doesn't contemplate that. I just want to make sure that's if they come in and agree to the program going forward. I'm not sure what that means in this context.
I was trying not to. I was trying to keep it simple. And I was trying not to I was trying not to undermine goodwill by laying out ultimatums at this point. I will say for discussion that I expect several things, fundamental things in that agreement to change if there's a recommitment to it. I don't believe that this is the time or the place to say what those things are. And because I would like them to fund this tomorrow, and I would like them to recommit to the program. And just in terms of meeting sequence, how do we communicate to them what that agreement in broad brushstrokes should look like? Does that need to be today? I don't think so. But certainly by the time they meet in April, I think the fundamentals of a renegotiated agreement have to be very clear to them so that when they vote in April, they know what they're voting about.
Perhaps a mutually agreed upon solution. It could be the wording that we don't know what it is today, but we need to work together to get there.
Yes, so,
By April or something? Do you want to
well,
put a date in?
same, it's the first, I don't know what the first Tuesday, I think they meet on Tuesdays, so the first Tuesday, I just said the first April, or their April meeting. If I amend this motion to say mutually agreed upon terms, that's, I get your point, because I've not specified what recommitment actually means, and that stops short of issuing ultimatums today. Because I don't, like, I know like the 3 bullet points in my mind of what I would like out of a renegotiated agreement. But I don't want to necessarily lay that out there, because in fact, Supervisor Settle, Janot, Donahue, and Comer might have 2 other things I'm not thinking about. So I will amend the motion to state the following. We direct the Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue Department to implement Flint Hill Volunteer Fire Company station staffing as recommended by the Public Safety Committee. If the Warren County Board of Supervisors, 1, fails to recommit at its March 3rd, 2026 meeting to extending funding of their share of the program under the current or recently terminated agreement, and 2, commits at their regular April meeting to mutually agreed upon terms to implement a new Warren County Rappahannock County agreement for Chester Gap operations. And certainly that's not much of an adjustment to my earlier motion, but I appreciate your input.
And the next month, it'll be the same scenario as this month. Your meeting will be on Monday, theirs will be on Tuesday, the 6th and the 7th.
And that contingent vote will be darn easy to make, I think, because we're gonna learn a lot between now and April, whatever it is. So, I don't know who seconded, but you got it.
I don't think anybody did yet.
I'll say.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I want to thank everybody for this conversation. I know it is very difficult. And I'm hopeful in the end the citizens win, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. And of course, everyone will find out soon thereafter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Madam Chair, might I suggest you swap the order of the next 2 items?
I'll move to swap the order, so that's under new business. Move that we swap the flock camera discussion with the review of our animal control language.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I'm going to give everybody a 5-minute break.
Sure.
Recess, and we'll be back. We're back. And we agreed to go to flock cameras next. Supervisor Whitson.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
First of all, I'm never one to react to public sentiment or on every single issue that arises in our day-to-day lives in Rappahannock County by calling for an agenda item. It's not my style. I just want to say up front, and the great thing about public comment coming earlier in a meeting is I can come in with a few talking points or ideas about how I want to frame a particular issue, and then wiser, more informed citizens, wiser people than me come up in public comment, and I scribble out all my talking points and just adopt what they said. So I appreciate Mr. Deakins and Miss Burr and Susan, who was here earlier and gave us the great Chinese New Year materials, Susan Babcock, because they all kind of helped me reshape my thinking on this. I want to say first and foremost, the sheriff gave me a lot of time recently, and I am full of gratitude for everything she does for our community. And I think Deakins captured it perfectly. I too owe the Sheriff's Department a debt of gratitude. When I disappeared from Rappahannock County for 5 months, the sheriff and her deputies watched over my house. And so when I, pardon me, when I come upon something where I disagree with the sheriff, which happens very, very rarely, it's never comfortable to me, for me, to even bring it up. And I did tell her before the newspaper came out with the first article about the flock cameras that she was probably going to be mad at me when she read it. So I wanted to give her a heads up about what I was going to say. And hopefully what I told her I was going to say is exactly what was in the paper. And I appreciate Tim Carrington for his accurate reporting and quotes. All this said, I love the sheriff. I love her deputies. I love everything they do for our community. We live in a wonderful, safe place, thanks in part to them. And when you say that you love somebody, you never follow it with but. You don't condition that. So I want to say absolutely positively, I'm full of gratitude for the Sheriff's Department. I'm also full of gratitude for our citizens. On difficult issues, citizens stand up year after year after year. And they bring things to our attention like this that we might or might not know about. And I'm full of gratitude for our citizens who are impassioned members of our community. I can't tell you the number of emails I've received from a handful of constituents with incredible detail about how these flock cameras operate. As I said to Mr. Carrington in the Rappahannock News, my first reaction to these without understanding all of the details about data retention, et cetera, that my constituents have informed me about just off the top of my head. And to quote Susan Babcock, why do we have to be like everyone else? And so when I heard about these from a constituent, I said, I don't think that's right. Are you talking about the school speed cameras? And they said, no, there are these other cameras. I didn't know about them. That's okay. Nobody owes me information about everything all the time, or us. And the sheriff is an elected constitutional officer, and she doesn't work for us. So she makes the best decision she can to use technology available to her to keep the citizens safe. And one area of technology that her deputies use, one piece of technology her deputies use, which I think is awesome, AEDs and patrol cars. It's a perfect example of technology that she has taken advantage of to save lives as recently as in January. A life saved because a deputy had an AED in his patrol car and used it. I was recently with a group of cardiac arrest survivors, and they said, and I was asking for best practices on how to make communities cardiac safe, and the first thing they said was, well, the easiest thing, but no one ever does it, is to have patrol cars with AEDs. And I said, we have it. So I appreciate the sheriff, and she makes do with scant resources and a small team. All that said, I cannot get beyond the feeling that these cameras just feel like Anywhere USA, and I don't want Rappahannock County to be Anywhere USA. And that's not even getting into all the data retention questions and where the data goes. And I have no doubt that the sheriff and her team have absolutely the best intentions, and the sheriff shared with me, and I think she shared publicly recent examples of where the flock cameras actually helped her find someone who had done something wrong, and I think that's great. All of that said, I feel like, and this is ultimately up to the sheriff, is I'm in no position to demand that the sheriff do anything, but it occurs to me that given the public concerns about these flock cameras, and I have heard from one citizen who, when they found out they weren't speed cameras, they're like, oh, that's fine. That's good if she uses those to solve crimes, once they heard that they weren't going to get a speeding ticket in the mail. So I can't say that every citizen I've talked to is against them, but most. So all that said, I do think that Ms. Burr made some great points in her presentation. I think that communication with the public, I think to some extent public input, a cost-benefit analysis of what are the benefits of this technology and what are the costs, cultural, societal, privacy, and otherwise. All that analysis, in my view, and a lot of it I'm sure is already done by the sheriff in making the decision to take on this flock camera program, 3 cameras, I believe, in the county. Maybe there are more coming, I don't know what the plan is, but all of that, sort of community input, what is the cost-benefit analysis show? What is the future plan? Will there be more cameras? Where will they be? Could we just pause the flock cameras for a bit to learn more about all of that? How long data will be retained? How long, or where the data goes? And I'm asking that not as a motion, not as a demand, not as a request, but respectfully ask the sheriff who's here with us today, and I'm grateful she's here, to consider maybe just pausing the cameras so that she has a sufficient opportunity to get the word out on how this operates and why it's important and why the benefits outweigh the cost to, in particular, our citizens' privacy. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple comments. My gut instinct is probably like everyone else's, kind of mind your own business. I don't like cameras either, will tell you, but I've overcome that. And it's probably 40 years in public safety and seeing extraordinary events and tragedy and some that could have been prevented had technology been leveraged. I received a few emails, 4 or 5 emails, and a couple one-on-one, actually 3 or 4 one-on-one conversations. A couple were like Supervisor Whitson, what is this flock camera? And after I sat down, which I thought would be a 5-minute conversation, it was a 35, 40-minute conversation of what they provide to public safety and a technology that can be used with extraordinary accountability, strong policy, audit, much like, and this is probably a bad example, using a firearm in public safety, you have to have extraordinary training to use that piece of equipment efficiently and effectively. The things that I heard and points of contention and reservation had to do with privacy of individuals, and I get that, and I think that should be first and foremost to all of us. I know it is with me. I've sat in front of committees at the state level, General Assembly, and fought for technology, and we all hear, well, this is Big Brother watching, and once you get your nose under the tent, then it just blows up and there's no control of that. Well, I can assure you, with this technology, and this has nothing to do with Flock, but there's so many other companies out there that are utilizing this technology. Thus, the good wisdom of our legislators they took baby steps with this. If you didn't know, you could only retain this information for 24, 48 hours for a number of years up until last year when the General Assembly changed that. It was asked for 30-day retention and dropped it to 21. Now, there was a lot of work to get from that point A to point B from 24, 48 hours to, and I'm talking about Virginia. You can go up and down the East Coast. I have a lot of colleagues up and down the East Coast, and we share different challenges with regards to technology, and it's all over the place. But the bottom line is, our citizens have to be educated and understand what this technology does, and more frankly, and maybe more importantly, what it doesn't do, I think is important. And then you talk about the data being sold, and I come from an agency where we equipped LPRs on thousands of vehicles because of statewide responsibility with robust policy, accountability, audits, agreement with the company that we were using, and revisiting that and holding those folks accountable. So, yeah, data being sold. I asked somebody the other day, they were talking about the speed cameras, and I thought the sheriff and her staff beautifully handled that. It seemed like it was in the paper all the time. It was an educational process, and I felt, coming from my previous world where traffic safety was a primary function of that agency, and I was very, very cognizant of policing for profit. And unfortunately, sometimes that's perceived to have taken place, but good leadership, as we have here, can make sure that doesn't happen. Cameras on the public right away. That's what I heard quite often. I also reached out to the sheriff, and she was gracious enough to get back with me, and we talked through it. Frankly, I mean, I didn't know the cameras were here either. I don't know that I may have been alarmed because I came from that world. But what I do remember is this is a very sensitive topic with regards to the Fourth Amendment. And frankly, just a mere observation of an object, in this case it'd be a vehicle, doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. There's case law on that. And I've come from an agency where we had, access and training with regards to a lot of suits when it comes to technology across the country that we share and train with. The lack of notice, debate, the transparency, hey, maybe that's a valid point. And I don't think there was any intention for the sheriff's office, knowing what I know about them and having started my career here. It goes way, way back when, I remember when we got our first radar. It was one of the old MR7s. It doesn't mean anything to you all. It means something to the sheriff. I had a few years on it, a great big, oh my Lord, what do we need that technology here in Rappahannock County? And I was just a young deputy, but, so technology has progressed and the tools of the trade has progressed. Someone said it's a lack of oversight because it was kind of implemented, in the middle of the night, or what have you. That's probably the perception because, folks, I went to a couple of locations where the cameras are at, and they're not on public right-of-ways, they're on private property. So the sheriff has the authority to do that, and I trust her to use good judgment where those cameras are at. The data dumped in, someone said, well, that data is being dumped into a national data bank, and they're using it for nefarious means and to sell and, making profit or what have you. Quite frankly, that was always on my mind every time we signed an agreement as an agency head. But the devil's in the details and accountability of it and strong policy and the constant communication with these vendors that we use. There's contracts every day. Every piece of technology we use, there's contracts with it. Sometimes it's the world we live in. We get nothing done. It was one of the emails said, well, we don't need technology. Just send a deputy or a trooper or law enforcement to take care of that. Now, I don't know, the sheriff is here, she could probably comment on this, but I dare say that they have more than one person per shift. And when there's a trooper available, they work as a team and they have some shared responsibilities, but they're primary and they're handling so many things. Speed is of essence these days. Is there a balance? You better believe it. There is a balance. We don't jeopardize or bump up against the Fourth Amendment or violate it because we want speed and because all we will be doing is setting bad precedent in case law. And quite frankly, there is some across this country. People make bad decisions, and a lot of that comes down to leadership and the accountability and having strong policy. And if you don't know, I think one of the comments was, retaining that data indefinitely. Now, take the vendor out of that. You have to take that for face value, make sure you've done all your homework with smart people that do those things every day. But with regards to, the data has to be dumped every 21 days. And, that's in state law that was passed when they bumped up the retention period. You have to have a policy that's posted. And I asked the sheriff that, and I believe that I have not pulled it up because I trust her. She says it is posted on the website. So, and I doubt that the public knew that. I didn't know that. I just knew it simply because of my previous employment. And typically, much like the speed cameras, someone was talking about, well, do the speed cameras track me even though it's not between 8 o'clock and 9:30? Those flashing lights are not on and I'm not going to get a summons, but is that still activated? Is it still picking up tags? I don't know. I hope that is in the agreement. So that, our mind rushes to some, and that question may have been answered already in some of the public forums. But the point being is, there's always going to be that little person on the shoulder talking about technology and utilizing it in public safety. The one thing, I've made a bunch of notes here, just reflecting back over my career. The one thing I like about Rappahannock County, and, in the simplest form, community policing is creates a partnership between law enforcement and the citizens. And I think Rappahannock is an extraordinary example of that. The more law enforcement interacts with its residents to protect the folks that we're sworn to protect, it helps us achieve our goals. And I believe Rappahannock County, again, and the Sheriff's Office and law enforcement here does a good job of that. I can sit up here and give you more examples than you'd want to hear. From someone, a juvenile who's abducted in the back of a car. Thank God someone got a tag number. The cameras are everywhere, folks. And I appreciate Deacon and his, I think you said you saw on the camera the dogs on your property or whatever. It's a technology that folks, two apples and oranges. But cameras are here at your toll booths. They're in every county around us, I suspect. I know, I would probably bet that they are. I know most counties have an implementation plan. They have public hearings. Yeah, maybe that was, I guarantee you, the sheriff didn't do that intentionally. It's probably, maybe just, I'll let her speak for herself. I've known her for a long time and her people. The Smith Mountain Lake shooting back in 2015, I believe. LPRs were successful in tracking down the perpetrator. They went across 3/4 of this state. Had it not been for that technology, that person was headed to commit another, we believe, unfortunately he took his life, to commit another homicide. Even going just 6 months ago, a double shooting on one of the interstates. Witnesses did not see anything other than they saw a bumper sticker that was unique and took that time period and went into the camera system and saw a unique bumper sticker that fit the description of that and solved that crime. You can say, well, that doesn't happen here in Rappahannock County. I I can give you a number of incidents right on our border and probably some within this county that you're probably not aware of. Thousands of cars travel through this county every day, certainly during tourism season. I think it's a tool that is necessary to bring incident resolution, and if it's used in the right way, with accountability, policy, review, audit, holding the vendor to the highest degree of what their contract is, what's expected of that. And quite frankly, I think the victims deserve it. They deserve law enforcement to have the best tools, not every tool. I've never been a believer in that. Some of it is just nice new tools. But this is an effective tool if it's managed properly, I would hope, and I believe the Sheriff's Office has done so. I think Supervisor Whitson had brought up a good point. I don't know what the future is for the cameras. You know, I understand they came from a grant. Gosh, that's important to get resource money to buy equipment. But maybe a pause now, just to kind of catch up a little bit and educate our folks here in the county. I'll stop there. This is a larger conversation, and I appreciated the presentation that was given, and I sat through many of those kinds of presentations in my previous job as superintendent, but there's a lot of good stories out there too, and it's used correctly. I'll stop there, Madam Chair.
John?
Glad to be sitting by Mr. Settle. So, thank you for your insights and your wealth of experience there, and you know, and also for the comments from Mr. Whitson. I've never been on the other end of having to try to catch somebody, and I appreciate the work that you did for a long time and that our sheriff does. You know, if it was my child, I would want you to have the cameras up, and I personally have no problem driving past them and knowing that they're there. You know, personally, I don't have an issue with that at all. I understand that that's sort of the world we live in today. I can hear the suggestions or the comments from people today and the various emails we've received and comments before this meeting that some people want to have a discussion about it. And I wonder if one way that we could facilitate that as the Board of Supervisors is to develop a policy from the county's perspective, knowing that we have no control over what the sheriff decides to do for cameras that we would pay for, that would be on areas we would control. That would allow the community to weigh in. We realize it's completely theoretical. We're not influencing the cameras that are currently up, but it would allow the community to weigh in. We could work with the sheriff on drafting language that would be Rappahannock County policy for the use of cameras. And maybe that'll create the sort of the buy-in. There's a lot of state regulation that I'm not aware of, but that we could incorporate into that and make sure we're doing things the way we're supposed to be doing it. But I wonder if that isn't a way to have this discussion in our community that would be completely within our control as a Board of Supervisors.
But I think this kind of starts the conversation that some people wish we would have had earlier. But part of our job, I think, is to learn about what people are concerned about and to educate as many people on our meeting day, and then deciding if we need to do something further to continue that education process for transparency and level the playing field to make sure that the truth is out. Because I've got people that have been in business or police officers, and in the past, I'm sure there wasn't great control, in the beginning when you throw things out there, government hasn't gotten involved and the newspaper hasn't gotten involved and everybody, maybe doesn't even know what's going on. But then when people start finding out about it, then rules get in place and timelines get in place and everything else that goes on. So I feel like, and I want to let you go next, but I feel like the information is on the sheriff's site, but we didn't know to tell people to go to the site earlier. Ms. Comer?
Yeah, so with regards to this topic, I took full advantage of the expertise of my new colleague, Supervisor Settle. I know my company. So I leaned into his expertise and had a great conversation with our current sheriff, whom I trust. You know, some of the bigger questions that the one Jackson resident that contacted me after the article, I was copied on other emails, I want to be clear, but I had one citizen who lives in Jackson contact me, and I spoke with that individual, and he was worried about access to personal information within the own department, as I understand it, and the sheriff is here, she can correct me if I misspeak. There are only 4 on her staff who have full access to this. We've already talked about the information being deleted, you know, every 21 days, every month, whatever it is, unless it needs to be earmarked for a court case. They are audited. So, and I assume that's a third party audit. So that made me comfortable knowing that somebody else was looking at their policy and their procedure and looking at what they are doing. And then the most important thing, again, correct me if I misspeak, you own the data. That data is not sold, correct? So knowing that just last week, I know Fauquier County they do have these cameras. They put out a success story. And yes, maybe we have 6 success stories and how many thousands of vehicles come through our county, but can we put a price tag on, you know, on the child that is found, or, you know, maybe the hit and run, or, you know, any number of things. That is not my world. So I appreciate the professionals who are in that world. And as I said earlier, I really lean into them. And then my only other thought was, you know, I think anyone who's interacted with me knows that often I tie things back to workforce, always workforce. And Mr. Settle already spoke to that. We can't have a deputy on every corner. This is a tool that I think we need to embrace. But just as with any tool, any of them, the responsibility on those who use it is great. And we have to make sure that it's well-intended and with that most integrity and transparency. We've spoken about maybe the rollout is what took citizens off guard. You know, maybe an FAQ or a designated time to answer questions. But that's really all I have to say about it, because why try to follow Supervisors said?
Well, as everyone else, I too spoke with the sheriff. Thank her for her time and everything she does for the county. And I spoke with Supervisor Settle. I couldn't imagine 2 more experts in the room. And some of the things that I found out in speaking with the sheriff, because I do understand the concern about data and what is done with it and that kind of thing. So one, I got the only information gathered is the vehicle type and the license plate. It doesn't get a picture of the driver. It doesn't give you anything else. It's the license plate and the type of vehicle. It's not like Easy Pass, which does obviously take your picture as you're going through it. It does not record continuously. There are people that were concerned that the cameras are just constant, but it's not that way. Data is owned by the sheriff, as Ms. Comer said, although Virginia code requires it to be deleted in 30 days is what I read. The system purges the information in 21 days. The state police can come in and audit the information is also what I read as far as who does the auditing. 2 steps to get the vehicle owner information. So they get the camera picture of the license plate, but then the sheriff has to go, or the, whoever is looking at the data, if they know they're looking for a particular license plate and there's a hit, then they can go into dispatch and put the license plate number in and find out who owns that vehicle. So it's not like when you get the license plate, you get all the data on the owner of the car. Let's see. And to me, this was kind of like with the new courthouse. Everybody was wondering why in the world we needed a 20,000 square foot courthouse. And it wasn't because of 7,400 citizens in Rappahannock County. It's because of the 80% or 79% of the people that come in our county do something they shouldn't have done. They got a ticket that ended up in the courtroom. That is, in my mind, who this license plate reader is for. It is supporting regional police as well if they have a missing child, a senior citizen, someone with Alzheimer's that shouldn't have gotten in a car and got lost. I mean, it's all of that information is used for the good of the citizens. Back to what everyone has said so far with the rollout could have been smoother. And I don't think the sheriff will probably argue that, but I hope she's going to come up and speak to us once I stop chatting. I think people did know about the cameras at the schools. It was repeatedly on social media and newspaper and everything else, so probably could have done that better, but I don't know her job. I respect that she does the best, she and her staff do the best they can to protect the citizens of Rappahannock County when bad people come in. It made me think of the gentleman that showed up on your front porch. Would we have caught him before he got to your front porch because he was not a good guy?
Fair point.
So it's that kind of, I do believe I'm not private. I've got a phone. I really believe if somebody wanted to find out where Debbie Donahue is, the government could figure it out if they were really interested. And the easy passes and the drones that are out there. I mean, and I think Culpeper has like 20 cameras, something like that. We have 4. So enough from me. Sheriff, would you like to come up and speak?
The only thing I want to add, everybody else has touched on my talking points.
Because we talked to you.
Yeah. It was an oversight on my part for not putting it out prior to erecting those cameras. I did meet with Mr. Carrington last week. I gave him all the information I had. I told him where the information was on the county website. Again, it's an oversight on my part that I didn't notify the citizens prior to erecting those. There's no excuse. I didn't do it. So maybe that meeting, we can be there. We can answer any questions that people may have. I know Miss, is it Beerton? Or she had an issue. She thought the camera recorded people coming and going in her driveway. It does not.
Not her.
That's not you?
No.
Oh, I thought, anyway, it's the camera on 231.
No.
I took care of that. It does not actually record the vehicles going and coming out of her driveway. The cameras actually face the road. As Ms. Donahue said, the cameras record the license plate, the model of the vehicle, and the color. As Mr. Settle said, if we have an incident, we can go into that camera system and type in that information on a vehicle. I know I've been approached a couple of times, both people for the cameras and against the cameras. I was going to bring up the incident that Ms. Donahue brought up to you. If we had had this technology then, we probably would have encountered that gentleman prior to him ever coming onto your property and you being put in the position that you were put in. You know, there have been people that have said, well, we don't have that many abductions in Rappahannock County, do we? I hope we never have any. But if we do, I hope we have those cameras in place to capture those tag numbers that we're looking for.
There have been a couple incidences for us where the cameras have worked out. We've been able to obtain owner information on the vehicles. This weekend, there were 2 in Fauquier County. A gentleman came here from North Carolina. He was wanted, I think it was like aggravated malicious wounding or something. The car had been put into the hot list, and when he entered Fauquier County, they were notified. Their deputies merged on the vehicle, made a felony stop, and took that subject into custody. So, you know, that's just some stories. As Mr. Settle said, he can probably tell you thousands of how those cameras have helped law enforcement. The young lady that came up and gave you the paperwork that said that we have to be like everybody else. We don't have to be like everybody else, but we shouldn't be shunned either. If the cameras help, then we should have them. I am a believer of them. I support the cameras, and I support my people that are allowed to go into those camera systems and view that. There are 4 of us that can actually do that. Myself, Major Dodson, Lieutenant Garcia, and Captain Jenkins. We're the only 4 that can actually go in and do a search in that system. The deputies get the hits, so if they're on patrol and a vehicle comes through the county, then they get the hits to let them know those vehicles are entering the county, and hopefully we can make a stop and do what we need to do. But I am a believer of the cameras, and again, as far as not notifying the citizens, I take that. That was solely on me, and all I can do is say, I'm sorry, and hopefully it'll never happen again. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Chair.
My only question was, I think everything you said was super helpful, both privately, and you shared the day we met, the anecdote from Woodville and the little boy in the school bus, who was nearly hit, and you were able to track someone down. So all those anecdotes are super helpful, and also just how you're internally, with your policy, et cetera, that's up on the website. My question to you is, and I recognized up front that I'm in no position to compel you to do anything, and I would never dare think that I could compel you to do anything. You're elected, I'm elected, but you're a constitutional officer, I'm not. I guess my question is, would you consider, because I stopped short of a motion, obviously, because I can't compel you to do anything, but would you consider just putting a very brief pause on the cameras, pending some kind of opportunity, like a public meeting or something, just so people understood everything you just said to us? Or is it your view that speaking to us now constitutes public education, which I understand and can accept because you're busy, and we all recognize that public meetings require a lot of preparation and time. So I'm just trying to think through, like, recognizing that maybe the rollout of this could have been more along the lines of, as Mr. Settle said, we heard a lot about the school speed cameras, a lot. It seemed like months and months and months, and then they were put up. In your mind, what's the best way to kind of educate the public about these and how you're using them, how you're managing them, and how you're ensuring data safety and all of that?
Well, if you go on the county website, there's a transparency portal that we put on there, and that will give you a lot of information. But stopping those cameras right now, I'm not in agreement with that.
Yeah, and I'm not.
What happens if there's data, and this is a question for you, what happens if there's data that's needed and those cameras have been put on hold? I'm not willing to tell someone, well, I can't find out where your child is because they went down a road that I used to have a camera on, but no longer have that. So, no, sir.
I respect that. And again, it was just a question. Yeah. I appreciate Supervisor Janot's suggestion about maybe approaching this from a county ordinance or county policy perspective. I don't know if you wanted to, this is a big, long discussion with no action, and sometimes it feels good if you take some action. And I didn't know if you wanted to frame that in a motion, because, and I think I understand the idea. It becomes a theoretical policy or a theoretical set of rules. but it would give citizens the mechanism by which to provide input.
Not so theoretical as you have contractors deploying cameras on your campus in these last several weeks and weeks ahead.
Well, that's an excellent point.
Very good point, yeah, and so I will put that into motion then. I move that we develop a policy for, and I guess, I was gonna say automatic license plate readers. Those cameras would not be license plate readers, they would be.
They could be.
But there may be other types of cameras, so maybe
But they're video cameras, but they could be provisioned to.
So maybe we need a video camera policy that would include automatic license plate readers for areas, basically controlled by the county. I don't know if that's a clear enough motion.
Would the planning commission start with that, or?
I don't see this as a land use item.
Okay.
No. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, a second discussion.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I think the idea is worthy, but is it necessary? Just a short little conversation, cameras do different things and or their intentions are, we're gonna create a policy that brings any technology that has a camera. I mean, Mr. Curry is right. Cameras can be programmed to do a whole lot of different things, and that list is long as well for specific tasks. Are we opening up ourselves to trying to manage something potentially, as you indicated? And the sheriff can she's a constitutional officer, she can do that, do as she wishes. I know she wants to be a team player and will learn from this, but and be careful about creating a policy. I believe that I want to charge law enforcement and the leaders that are responsible for this to do the right thing with regards to good sound policy that's on record and constitutional challenges that are on record. I'm not opposed to policy because policy, I think, gives us good guidance in government, but I'm just wondering, what are we governing here when the next person comes in and has some other unique situation regarding, if we're talking just LPRs, I think that we have a policy in place. It's posted, it's for everyone to see. It's, I dare say that we can call the sheriff or anybody in our department to come give us a brief. But I'm not sure a policy achieves maybe what we think it will achieve.
Well, my question was just more for clarity, like, I really can't say it much better than, again, Supervisor Settle. How big does that go? So we build a courthouse, do we then, do we have to have a public hearing before we put security cameras on a courthouse? I just want clarity, like, how big does it get? I'm not opposed to, certainly.
Are you telling us we have to go?
Is that last call?
That was last call.
Bar time again.
3 minutes.
I'm not opposed to a policy, I just want clarity on what we're making a policy on, if that makes.
Yeah, and I guess my thought is, I hadn't thought about the campus here. It sounds like there's a lot of state policy and probably some federal law that surrounds the license plate readers. I don't know if that would extend to the courthouse or the grounds here. We don't quite understand that, but my thought was that provides the best forum for the public to come and interact and say, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. And maybe it's too complicated. It's too, there are a million situations, and once you write a policy, you've got to consider all of them. I don't know, but more than anything, that it would basically be the creation of the policy allows the public to voice what they're okay with, you're not okay with.
Can't we just have a public hearing on on license plate readers? For discussion and education?
You know, at the risk of.
The hearing has to be built around, typically it would be a hearing on an ordinance, and we're stopping short of that.
The constitutional officer empowered to do this has taken action, and quite frankly, you are not empowered to put LPRs on the road. She is. You could put them on your private property, public, for all practical purposes, and you certainly could create policy around that. But I think, you know, Mr. Goff and I were just speaking, if you use that camera for some criminal matter and somehow you didn't follow your policy to the perfect decimal point, have you just lost that? I'm not sure what you're accomplishing, quite frankly, and it scares me to you know, adopt a policy for the general purpose of informing public rather than implementing practices that you want to put into place. I mean, if there are practices you want to put into place, then adopt a policy. But if it's to inform the public, then find some way to inform the public. And quite frankly, I think the Rap News has already done that through 2 articles, and probably there'll be a 3rd.
That makes sense, and so I'll, at the advice of Mr. Curry, Mr. Goff will withdraw, and Mr. Settle, I'll withdraw my motion.
Yeah, I think, John, you hit on something. I mean, when the courthouse, if it comes to fruition and we have our security cameras installed, I would expect there to be a policy for that courthouse that would be in the contingency plan of the courthouse operations and the cameras. To me, that's integrated into that specific thing, but there's plenty of code and law regarding LPRs. And frankly, and I believe this year or next year, and I don't know whether that's been out of Richmond for a year, but the Community Policing Act, and I know the sheriff's familiar with that because she has to comply with it. Every law enforcement agency has to report any kind of detention stops, stop and frisk, whether you're arrested or not, demographics, and part of that, to be added to that, are going to be LPRs, stops, which adds another level of accountability. And sometimes our policies write us in the corner, and then we're saying, why do we do that? I think it's a good idea, but I think we pick and choose. I don't know that this, personally, from my experience, good sound policy takes care of it.
I understand the people that I'm hearing from. The biggest fear is the data, who has access to it, who can get access to it. And when you say it's purged, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So how do we get further information that would answer those questions and be able to share that with the community?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I know how our agency dumped it. You delete it, and with the applications and this, I'm using the wrong words here because I'm not a technologically savvy guy, but it deletes it and wipes it clean. Is what we're told, and we have some very smart people that look into that. I don't know what that software is, but. And I'm sure there's many different ones. I don't know what the sheriff might use or how she deletes hers or dumps it or what have you, but yeah. And I think the sheriff is in the best position to educate the public on this.
Yeah.
I think we've done our due diligence by putting it on, thanks to Supervisor Whitson. I appreciate you putting that on there because this is a really good conversation that's important to probably all of us. But beyond that, we're going to be looking to the sheriff or Judge Dodson to answer those questions. I don't see them closing their door to this topic. In fact, I see them trying to add some calm to this and an explanation. And if they don't, then maybe we revisit it. But do we even have the authority? We don't. This is just...
Are we okay moving on? Thank you
Thanks,
for being
sir.
here. And I think we did receive a lot of good information from people, so
Madam Chair, I recommend that perhaps you move item H1 and the remainder of the day session to the end of the evening session.
Please.
And then you can take care of a very short closed meeting where Mr. Goff will inform you of the couple active cases. Mr. Capps is unavailable to join us. And then you can come back tonight and have a public hearing and then hear about this other item.
That's a great idea. We need a motion.
I'll move that. I move that we push I think the remainder of the daytime agenda to the,
Yeah, except for the closed meeting.
except for the closed meeting to the evening session. And I don't, in terms of order,
I think you want to have the public hearing first.
okay, that's fine. So we'll just move the remaining items with the exception of the closed meeting to our evening session with retaining the same sequence of the day meeting, but tacking on to after the public hearing that's already scheduled.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
So perhaps one of you could
Sure, I can do it.
close meeting, and then we can move on with that.
I went away, so do you want to read the top part?
That and that. Top part.
Yep, all the way, that first paragraph.
All of it.
Yep.
I move that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors conduct a closed meeting in accordance with section 2.2-3711.a of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of 1, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing and open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. The subject matter of the closed meeting will be 1 Williams v. Rappahannock County of Supervisors, Circuit Court Case Number CL23000043, and 2 Circuit Court Case Number CL240000147, Carl Hendrickson and Donna Hendrickson and Harmony Manor, B&B LLC, v. the Board of Supervisors of Rappahannock County.
Thank you, and this is verbal vote.
So that's a motion, and who's the second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Suttle? Mr. Jeno?
Aye.
Ms. Comer?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
And aye. Awesome. We're in closed session. Do we have to put something on the door?